There is a Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay.
That one there got wheels on it? No.
You want to see if we get a better chance so we don't have accidents? Next. If that's how you normally do it, Erica. Dina, where's my buddy go? Once you, it's missing a.
It looks like it's missing the power part of it. Because this is the main.
I don't know who sets that up, Erica, so we'll just take notes of that. Can you do that?
Yeah.
All right, the next item on, well, first of all, I'll point Janice, since Leo's not here. Why don't you sit in for Leo? Next item on the agenda is public comments. If anybody has any comments from the public on anything that's not on the agenda, something that's not on the agenda. And seeing none, I'll close the public comment. The first item on the regular business is Linda M. Hopi, Brad D. Terrence, public hearing for an application for site plan at 25 Beach Street Extension, tax map U3, lot 148, M2 zone. The proposals for a limousine service to be operated from that location.
My name is Joe Cacciatore, and I'm representing Mr. Terrence. I'm the sales realtor in this operation. They weren't able to make it this evening, but Greg Schapowski is also, he's going to be the owner of the limousine service.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe the gentleman he was trying to contact, Mr. Kendrick, on the situation with the water, putting a well on the property. They wouldn't have to use the town's water because of the bans that Newmarket has.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't get a response. That's why he didn't have anything on the measurements, because he was waiting to get a response on the water before he could move forward. Presently, he has submitted a letter, and we're waiting to hear back in writing. At this time, there is a reasonable amount of money being spent, and my people just want to make sure that it's going to go smooth before they close on the deal. I'm sure Mr. Hopi wants to move forward, and we want to move forward. I'm open to suggestions from the board right now.
Well, what is the applicant proposing to do?
It's going to be a limousine service.
That we know, okay.
Okay. I believe it's going to be 10 cars, and I believe Clay Mitchell and Mr. Schapowski were going to measure out the lot, but they never got together on that. But then it came up with the water situation, where there's a chance there might be water bans in the summer.
There are.
There are, okay, so I'm not familiar with the town. He was wondering if he could put a well on the property, if there'd be any reason why he couldn't put a well on the property, so he wouldn't have to use the town water, but private water, his own water. And this is what we're trying to find out now.
As far as I know, I'm let the other board members comment, there's no reason that you can't put a well in. However, we probably, if it went that way, we'd probably condition it so that you could only use the well during the times of the water ban. You still need to be hooked up to the water.
That would be fine. We just don't want to do anything that's going to affect the town in his business. We're trying to work with the town.
So, is it a definite that that's what's going to happen, or are you still trying to figure out if you can put a well in, or?
We're trying to get permission from the town to say, yes, that this can be done. As soon as we get something firm from the town, then we want to proceed and move forward and actually close the deal. Just that there's going to be a lot of money spent here, and my people are afraid to move if they can't do what they want to do.
So, the proposal is, because right now, we don't have much in front of us.
Right.
Okay, there's two big issues that have to be resolved and need to be clarified to us.
Okay,
One is the water, which,
that's the main thing.
assuming you're gonna go through with the well, we can make some judgment on that.
Right,
The other is the parking,
parking, yes.
right? And based on our calculations, it doesn't look like 10 could fit in there.
On the outside perimeter.
Well, it's even with the number in the bay. It looks like 3 in the bay and possibly 4 or 5 outside. And what, at
Talking
least
8.
one of my questions that I would have is, how often are all the cars there? And presuming that your limo drivers have to park someplace, it'll end up being 10 cars there no matter what.
Right, presently, he doesn't own 10 cars. He's hoping to build it 10 cars. But when a driver comes in, his car comes in, and a vehicle leaves. So if he is to have 10 vehicles there will always be in the vicinity of 10 vehicles, because people come in, they drop off their vehicles, they take the limousine out. So we could assume there would always be 10 there, once he hits that number.
Because I think either Mr. Terrence or Chapaskis has to determine whether you can fit those numbers in and give us a firm proposal
Okay.
what can be there, because by our estimation, it looks very tight without double parking or what's the word I'm looking for?
I know he's parking, yeah, I understand. Mr. Chapowski's big thing, though, was the water. He says, if I can't wash my vehicles, because it's a professional service, he has to keep his vehicles clean. If he can't wash his vehicles, then that would be a problem. So he wants to get that straightened away first, something from the town saying, yes, I can put a well in, and what are the guidelines to follow. And then he was gonna meet up with Mr. Mitchell, and they're gonna go out and measure up the lots.
At this point, then, I would take this as I'm viewing this as a consultation, more than a review and approval. I'll open this up to the board's discussion. In my opinion, if a well could be put in and used only for washing the cars during the ban, that would be amenable, but I'd like to hear from other members of the board.
Sure?
George? Yes,
Do you have any idea approximately how many gallons of water would be used per day?
This is what he presently does. He will fill up a 5-gallon bucket with soap water. He'll use that one bucket to soap up all 10 vehicles, and then he rinses off with a hose. There's probably less water being used to wash the 10 vehicles than doing a load of laundry, because it's 55 gallons to a wash machine. He's not using 55 gallons of water to wash his vehicles.
And that would be approximately every day?
Not 10 vehicles. It could be as many as 10. It could be as little as 2. It depends on what goes in and out for the day. But we were giving you the worst-case scenario because it could possibly happen.
Now, I don't know firsthand, I just read this in the Exeter paper today, that Rick Mulaski was talking about the water ban possibly being lifted soon. So it seems to me, to cover yourself, probably it would be a good idea to have a well as a backup.
Right.
But also that the use of your water is very minimal,
It would be.
compared to a lot of other businesses.
It would be. I know the last time we were here, the board suggested we'll go to a car wash. Well, at $5 a vehicle, even if he was to do 5 a day, that's $25 a day, and that's almost $200 a week. That's $10,000 a year. That adds up when you're trying to operate a business. So the water is very crucial here. And this is why we're just trying to make sure we get everything worked out before we move forward.
Yeah, Paul?
I may be wrong, but I don't think the planning board has jurisdiction over whether they put in the well or not. I think he has to go talk to,
Mr. Kendrick, I think his name was, he has to set up a meeting.
well, both the state and the town as to what the regulations are concerning a well when you're also on the town system. They may require a separate plumbing system so that there's no cross connection between your well and the town
Right.
system.
Well, you have to come in with a separate line.
So that, your potable water that you're gonna drink comes out of the town, and your hose bibs on the side of the house or building come out of your well.
That wouldn't be too hard to do when you think about it, just, draw your well,
And
put in the
again,
line.
that's, I don't think that's the jurisdiction of this board.
Well, I know he has a meeting, and I believe the gentleman's name is Kendrick, but I'm not 100% sure what that in town. And he's supposed to give him something in writing. That's what we're waiting on right now. We haven't received it yet. As soon as we get that, then we want to move forward. But it's not feasible for us to move forward if we don't know what we can do. And we don't want to upset the town in any way. So,
Jim?
Yes.
I think that, that there is provisions, I think, in the water department regulations to allow uses, especially business uses, and I think that ought to be explored as to whether, I mean, this isn't the normal car washing thing, it's just like the washing business downtown, they use cars to, water to use cars, and I think that, exceptions can be made under the water regulations for business uses, and I think that's an avenue that should be looked at. And now, parking, Clay,
Well, before you move on, Leo, I want to clarify what you just said. An exception for business use is what, for town water?
yeah,
For what, the
Yeah.
ban?
for
I-
business use, and that could be under the water department regulations if the council so wanted to.
Drinking too.
Or whatever the council wanted to allow.
And who has you're saying the town council has to be the one who approves?
I would think that under the water department regulations, that would be an exception that they would have to make if they wanted to. I guess parking, Clay, we have, this M2 zone, isn't there provisions for off-site or whatever parking in the M2 zone if, or that just in the M1?
I think it's the M1 and the M2, actually, that allow that.
So,
Allow what?
allow parking by regulation on different uses. No, you can have off-site regulations. If they had an off-site place, they could park the vehicles, whatever, that would be allowed in the M1 and M2 zone.
Okay, I understand. I just didn't, I wasn't clear what you were actually talking about.
I think it was M1, M2, I'm not sure. Yeah, in the M1, M2 district, parking shall be evaluated in a different manner than, and it says typical on-site parking is insufficient in downtown area, and therefore, no, it can be figured differently than,
And that's fair, but they'd have to, I would want that presented to us before we made an
yeah,
approval.
that's what I'm saying, is
Okay.
that they could present something that would deviate from our standard parking regulations.
So if they got permission to park at the railroad parking lot, that'd be fine.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on the board?
Got the squeaky chair.
I think what you're hearing is we need, before we make an approval on this, there's several avenues you can go to solve some of your dilemmas. Either determine you can have a well, I think we'd all consider that a viable method.
right.
Leo's just mentioned if you went to the water board and the town council and they approved the outdoor use, though, my opinion on that is that's approving an outdoor use like that when other people in the town can. I'd prefer to see a well situation where you're supplying that water during the water bans if necessary.
Right.
And then alternatives to your parking situation if you were to get to 10 vehicles, I think. Because it's evident whatever number of vehicles you have there, you will have a constant with the person driving, the limo driver leaving his car there and another one out. It would be very tight there. So how you can figure that or how you resolve those issues. And an alternative for the parking is that if you can, I guess, make arrangements with other parking areas in town, that could be worked out.
Okay.
So I think it's viable, but this board hasn't heard, we need some input from you on how you're gonna
Right.
do that.
We're gonna have to measure, we have to get together with Mr. Mitchell and go out there, measure everything up and
Right.
work everything out. And we intend on doing so. But like I said, the big thing was the water. That was scaring us when we were at the last meeting, and
I think you have some homework to do there, but I think that we've just heard there's some solutions.
right, right.
So, at this point, I would, unless the other board members or anybody, I'm sorry, I didn't open this up to the public, so can I open this up? You're,
I'm Brad Terrence. I'm the-
okay, then please, go ahead.
I just have a question I'm just trying to reaching here. When I spoke to Clay earlier, a couple weeks ago, we'd talked about, just briefly mentioned about the shape of the property being a triangle shaped. And if we were able to open it up so it's more rectangular shaped. That would give us more parking spaces. Basically, when it's triangle shaped like this, that tip of that triangle is basically useless to everybody. Nobody can use that. I don't know if you're familiar with the property out here. But if there was some way that we could basically open up that triangle shape, that could possibly add on one more parking space on either side, and then also perhaps the town or somebody could use that little tip of the triangle. Somebody could put that to good use instead of it being useless right now. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If that could add a couple more parking spaces, and if the town is willing to work with us on something like that, that would be.
What's your plan for doing that? I mean, if the
Well, at this point, there's no specific plan. It's basically because it's triangle shaped, it abuts two different properties: the town's property, the town's parking lot, and I'm actually not sure who owns the other parking lot on the other side there. But if something like that could work. That's something that we could also pursue if the town, you think the town would be interested in doing something like that.
this board can't speak for the town. I mean, if you can make those I mean, if you can, in my opinion, if you could go to whoever you need to get that approval from, and I guess it'd be the town administrator first and then the town council, and those arrangements could be made and they're viable within the ordinances and regulations, I guess we'd entertain them, but this board can't give you that decision, I don't think, or say it's
Okay.
it's appropriate.
Mhm.
Anybody else want to add to that?
That's the avenue. You should talk to the town administrator if you're interested in communicating with the town about acquiring that land or using it.
Okay. All right. Thank
But
you.
it's reasonable,
Okay.
like, for the reasons you said.
All right.
All right, I'm sorry, I'll open this up to public comment, if anybody has any public comments on this agenda item. Seeing none, I'll close the public comment. I'll look for a motion to continue this.
I'll make a motion to continue Hopi Terrace public hearing to August 9th.
Any discussion? Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Deb Berger, second. Do I have discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Next item on the agenda, hope I say this right, Frank Smass, sorry, and the Nature Conservancy, excuse me. Public hearing for an application for minor site plan at 112 Bay Road, tax map R2, lot 28-1, R1 zone. The proposal to use the existing parking lot, lighting, and residential structure for a nonprofit conservation organization office space with the possibility of one employee living in the structure. There'll be no change to the exterior footprint of the home unless the town requires changes. The only change to the exterior is to rebuild the existing deck so that it is brought up to current building code and all materials can be replaced. The office space will occupy the approximately 2,528 square feet of the building. However, should the Conservancy rent living space to an on-site employee, the office space would consist of 1,344 square feet, with the living quarters occupying 1,184 square feet in the basement.
And if I drag that easel over here, that'd be okay?
I missed the agenda item, the approval minutes.
Dwayne, you're really pushing it, man.
That's the reason I did that, so we'll never do that again.
Well, hey, I just noticed I don't have anything to worry about that. My name's Dwayne Hyde. I work for the Nature Conservancy. I'm the Director of Land Protection for the Conservancy, and I'm here tonight on behalf of this application. In the audience, we have Val Shelton, the real estate broker representing Mr. Smaz, and Frank Smaz, here, the owner of the property. The Nature Conservancy has been working with the Great Bay Resource Protection Partnership, which is a conglomeration of about 9 conservation groups and conservation agencies on protecting land in and around Great Bay since 1994. And that map that's hanging up there shows in the dark green the properties we've protected to date since 1994, which represents about 4,000 acres in and around Great Bay. We've done this work in partnership with many of the communities, including the town of Newmarket. As of late, we're working right now on 2 properties in Newmarket with the Open Space Committee and Clay Mitchell. Our work to date in Newmarket is focused on Tuttle Swamp in this area, and then of course the Bayfront properties over on Bay Road, and with the latest closing being the Junior Sawyer property. With all this work being done in the Great Bay area, the Nature Conservancy has a staff presence that works in this area. Currently, I work in the area. We have a marine ecologist working in the area, and we also have a land steward who oversees the management and stewardship of these properties. Currently, we rent space in Newfields, and as we all know with renting, it can be a bit unstable. Properties change hands. If you are at the whims of the market with respect to rent lease rates. We have the opportunity came about to acquire the Smoz property, and we looked around, and there were some private donors who were willing to put up the money to assist us in this acquisition to use the property as an office space. We've been before the Zoning Board of Adjustment and have received a variance for the use on that property, to use the property as a nonprofit conservation organization office space. The conditions of that variance included that there be no more than 5 employees working from the site, and it also allowed for, as your description read, the use of the bottom half of the house as a rental space for one of the employees that would be working on site. The use of the Smoz property will not be as a visitor center. It will be as an office space for the Nature Conservancy's employees. We propose no major exterior changes or renovations to the property. What we're likely to do is rebuild the deck and bring it up to code so it can support the potential people walking around on the deck. We also propose that there be a wooden sign in compliance with the town's zoning ordinance at the entrance to the property. And the exterior lighting will stay very much in nature and in character as it is right now, with the standard residential floodlights on the outside that are there right now. I'll just flip this around if I may. Property is shown here, Bay Road, right there. The Smoz house is located right here. It's a 36-acre tract of land with I can't think of the creek, a Lumberland Creek flowing right here out into the bay. Those of you that drive down Bay Road are probably very familiar. It's got the open, sweeping views out into the bay. Currently, about 29 acres of the property is protected by an LCIP easement that was done in the late 80s, but about 6 acres of the property right here on the front is unprotected by that LCIP easement. So what we're proposing to do is to use the existing house and office as the office space, use the outbuildings as storage as they are currently used. And what we're proposing to do is expand the easement and protect additional acreage on the property, including about 400 feet from the creek up, and protect that area of the property and include that in the LCIP easement. Then also, we're looking right now at possibly taking a corner of the property and also putting that in LCIP easement, because the wetlands flow pretty close to this corner, and we want to put some additional buffers to those wetlands. And then this property fits in very well to our management and oversight, because the abutting 127 acres is owned by the Nature Conservancy as the Lumberland Creek Preserve, and we have a parking lot for the trail system that is on our Lumberland Creek Preserve right over here, right near the corner of this property, where we have about a mile of trails for people that are open to walk on. And we look at potentially linking those trails up onto this property so people can enjoy the beautiful views from the property. As to our site plan, we are requesting a number of waivers, requesting a waiver to the parking requirement The zoning ordinance currently requires 10 parking spaces for an office use of this square footage. The site currently has 7 parking spaces there, and seeing we're limited to 5 employees, we figured it was a reasonable request to ask for such a waiver. And in addition, our staff are very often out in the field and in meetings and not in the site on a regular 9 to 5 type basis. Second waiver is for landscaping requirements. The site, as those of you that drive by it, Frank does a wonderful job landscaping his property. It's a beautiful property. And we believe that the existing landscaping meets the town's requirements and intent of the landscaping requirement. Also waiver to the boundary land requirements, boundary plan requirements. We have a plan that is on record that was done by Bruce Pahopek at the time of the conservation easement, and we've modified that plan to show the existing improvements, which was in your packet, and we hope that that will suffice for your needs. And then, in addition, requesting a waiver to the existing conditions requirements, such as 2-foot contour intervals, soils mapping, and floodplain mapping, since given the lack of exterior changes, those may not be necessarily appropriate. We've reviewed the potential conditions that Clay has proposed to the planning board, and all of those are acceptable to us with one small change to the first condition. Our intent here is to own and manage this property as a conservation property and as an office space. But eventually, at some point in the future, we may look to subdivide and sell the house, the area that is unencumbered by the easement that we're putting on it. So a 3-acre, basically something in the neighborhood of a 3-acre lot, that would then be a single-family residential home. And we would restrict it to such when we made that sale. And we would like to, that the way the condition that Clay proposed would be if we were to sell it as a single-family home, it would still need to come before the planning board, and we would just like not to have to do that if we sell it as a single-family home. That's the end of my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
And before we do that,
Accept it.
I want a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to accept the conservatory plan
It's complete.
as complete.
With, we then have to vote on the waivers after that.
Yes.
Okay. I have a second.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor to accept the plan as complete? All in favor? Aye. Okay, now, sorry, we can get into the discussion phase. Does anybody have any question for Dwayne, isn't it?
Correct.
I have one question. Parking is one waiver. The other is ADA compliance, since this is now an office space. ADA with a handicap, will you have a handicap spot for parking, and will you make the building handicap accessible?
We're going to work with the code enforcement officer on those requirements as to ADA accessibility. To date, the rebuilding of the deck, what we will do is have a ramp going up onto the deck and making sure that's accessible. And the parking, parking is available right there next to a nice parallel parking spot, right next to the sidewalk that would go into the house. Mhm.
Okay. That was my question. Go, Leo.
Now, I got a question, I guess, on the subdivision of land in the future. I think that's part of our zoning regulations. I have a question whether we can waive it. Clay?
I don't think, no, we couldn't. I don't think so.
No, I don't think
Waive.
so either.
I don't think he's asking that, though.
Oh, I
think
thought
it's-
he said that if they wanted to,
They would come back to, he's reading my condition to say that they would come back to you for site plan review even if they changed it to a single-family home, which, you know, I guess somebody could interpret it that way, and I've already penned in something that might do it, but if he subdivided, he knows he'd have to come back here.
Oh, sure, yep.
Well, I guess maybe it's the same question, but when you were talking about adding more to the conservation easements, that sounds like a subdivision lot line adjustment. I presume that's something in the future that you'd come back and make those, either with the zoning board or us, get approved.
Well, the delineation of a conservation easement on a property is not a subdivision of the property, it's just a delineation of a restriction on the property. So that doesn't require site plan or zoning board approval. What we would intend to do if we ever did sell the property is subdivide along those easement boundaries, and we fully realize that if we were to do that, we would have to come before this board to get approval of that subdivision and create those lines. But for all intents and purposes, the property will be under, the entire property will be under the Nature Conservancy's ownership, a portion, most of which will be under a conservation easement with a portion that would be unencumbered.
Any other discussions? All right, I'll open it up to the public comment. Does anybody from the public have a comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment on this. Does the board have any other, I guess, other discussions? Just for the record, since Leo's here, Janice, you would step down now as an alternate. Did you get that, Erica? Okay. Yeah. Yes, Chad.
How many parking spaces are you thinking of adding?
Excuse me?
How many parking spaces are you planning on adding?
We would like to add no additional parking spaces. Currently, as the property, the parking is currently laid out on the property, you have kind of a long driveway. You have a driveway going up that opens up into a kind of a flag-shaped area, and that paved area is has a capacity for 7 parking spaces. We'd like to keep the residential character of the property and really kind of keep it consistent with the neighborhood, and we feel that adding additional impervious surface and parking would potentially take away from that character.
They want a waiver to go from 10 to 7.
Oh, from 10 to 7. Okay.
Any other questions, discussions? Why don't we do this in 2 steps? I'll accept the motion to accept, unless some people object, to a motion to accept the waivers to the application.
So moved.
Second?
I second it.
Did you get that, Erica? Any discussion? Okay, all in favor for accepting the waivers to the application?
Aye.
Accept the motion to approve the application?
Talk about this. I make a motion that we approve this application of Frank Smas and the Nature Conservancy on 112 Bay Road, tax map R2, lot 28-1.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Chad seconded. Any discussions? Seeing none, I'll put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Enjoy. Thank you. All right. And to prove that it's very hard to teach an old dog new trick, I stepped over an agenda item on review and approval minutes, so I'll go step back for a minute on to do those. Having done it for 1 year as the last item on the agenda, I keep on forgetting it. So let's go back to the mini minutes. The first set is May 17th. Does anybody have it? I'll start off. I have some comments for you, Erica. On page 3, in the boldface area where it discusses the application, the second line, it says major site plan / lot line. The word right now is loan. It should say line. In that first paragraph after it, beginning with Dan Burke, the 5th line from the bottom, it should be, say, for the tree planting to area disturbance ratio. Should be, the word area should be in front of disturbance. I'll give these to you at the end, too. On page 4, the second full paragraph, beginning with Chet Shablonsky, the second line, maintenance is spelt wrong. Just correct the spelling. On page 7, the first line, this is read Danberg displayed that the last waiver referenced section, take out the word was and change reference to referenced. That's all I had. Does anybody have any other comments on the May 17th meeting minutes?
I make a motion to accept the May 17 minutes.
I second it.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
June 14th meeting minutes? I think I only had 2. On the very first page, the last line, I think it's the last line, at least in my version, it says she cited cited spelt with an S, it should be spelt with a C, C-I-T-E-D. And on page 13, first full paragraph, last sentence, it says into the exiting wetlands, it should say existing wetlands. Further on down, the paragraph that says Brad Mesquita, it should say Brad Messina was the person, M-E-S-S-I-N-A. And one more, page 17. Second full paragraph, Frank Daniel stated that he was a manager of Irving Oil, not to Irving Oil, of. And that's all I had. Anybody else?
I didn't bring that. Some changes.
Hang on, Rob did you have comments? Anybody else have comments on the June 14th?
I'll make a motion to accept the June 14th Newmarket Planning Board minutes.
Second?
I'll second.
Deb, second? All in favor?
Aye.
Could you just pass these two, Eric, and make it easier on him? Okay, next item on the agenda is Turcott Real Estate Holdings LLC. Public hearing for an application for site plan review at 183 Main Street, tax map U3, lot 184, M2 zone. The proposal is to convert the existing 4-unit residential building into a 5-unit residential building by adding a 2-bedroom unit in the daylight basement portion of the structure. As long as we can see it.
Steve's lining one. Is that
Keep it
acceptable to everyone?
Is that acceptable for those?
Yeah, if you set up the easel, will you set up on that side, because the camera's right there?
All right, I'm Roger Roy. I'm with MJS Engineering. How you doing?
Aye.
All right. We did,
I'm Robert Turcott,
Yeah,
this is
Robert.
the representative owner of the property, 183 Main Street.
okay, we did get the comments from Clay, and in response to those, I'll just like to drop a couple, drop letter to the town and then go with the presentation.
Okay.
Okay. Giving a letter requesting a waiver. I'll get into the details of it later. Obviously, grab a copy. Okay, so the project in brief is basically it's an existing 4-unit residential dwelling. And this is sort of the outline. I've got a plan here that does a little more justice. The existing unit, the existing site conditions have 6 parking spaces that are at a 45-degree orientation with a 12-foot wide access aisle serving those parking spaces. It's a one-way in and out. It's not a through parking area. Access is off of Tasker Lane. There's entry into the building from South Main Street, but there's no parking right out that side of the street, although there is parking up near the front of the church and the town hall. So what we're proposing to do is add a basement apartment unit, and for that, we would need to provide additional parking spaces. And to meet the town's reg, we'd have to add 2 more parking spaces. So we're going to take one of these existing, there's one existing space that acts as a parallel parking space. And we're going to take that space and add 2 more and create a 90-degree parking area in here. So I don't know if everyone can see that all right. And some other changes to the site associated with adding the parking and doing the basement apartment are that we need to provide emergency access out of the apartment, a secondary emergency access. So the current condition is that there's a set of stairs. We don't really show all the steps, but there's stairs, landing, stairs, another landing, and then it goes up to a deck. So that's this line area. It's this area right here. And so, oh yeah, and then this is a picture. Very good. Bob's done a great job to prepare some boards. So this is that existing area on the what would be the east side of the building near Tasker Lane. Right here is Tasker Lane. So we're going to cut this slope, this slope out, and basically create a retaining wall that will allow us to get access to a window that would be basically at the second stair in this landing right here. So that basement, that window will be at the basement, and will meet the safety code requirements. And Bob, I believe you're talking to Dan Vincent about that. Okay. So all right, so I'll show you how we're going to basically create that. So we have our parking, the 3 90-degree parking spaces here. There's a proposed walkway. We're going to do basically pavers for the walkway. We will do granite curb. The plans will be changed to reflect granite curb. That was one of the comments. So this will be paver walkway, and it'll be at grade with the building to provide access to that window I talked about. And then there'll be a retaining wall to hold back the soil. We're proposing basically a ready block, segmental block retaining wall. It's going to be on general along this edge. It'll be 3 to 4 feet tall, and then right here it'll be 5 feet tall. But sort of bouncing around. So okay, so there's that walkway, and to get up to the upper level, the street level of the building, we're proposing stairs here that get us up to a landing that get access up into this area of the building. There's really no door there, but it just gets you up to the street level if you want to get up there. So some things that aren't on the plan, but obviously we will work out with Dan Vincent, our requirement for rails. We do have a 5-foot high wall right here. We have the stairs, so we'll need to show, a rail will be needed there. And I think that's really would be in, Dan Vincent's jurisdiction. Bob's plan is doing some shrubs here, or, come up with a solution to maybe, we only have a 3-foot, 4-foot high wall here, which I think the rule is 4 feet. You won't necessarily need a rail, but some shrubs are in place there that provide some sort of barrier at the top of that wall. Right, that's pretty much it. The letter I submitted is a request for a waiver. We do have this 90-degree parking area. The access aisle width is 12 feet, as I had said before. That's this region right here. So I'm just going to draw, highlighting the access aisle. Delineate that. Right now it works fine for those 45-degree angle parking spaces. I'm not going to lie to you, it's not going to be the best situation for the 90-degree aisle, the 90-degree parking. But considering the site conditions, And considering that Tasker Lane is a low-volume road, I believe it serves 9 lots. You know, a maneuver can be made such that it might be a 3-point turn to get to this space here, and then back out into the street. And I think these other 2 spaces, the access is reasonable without doing a 3-point turn. So that kind of talks about the waiver request, which I'm sure comes after you accept the application.
Is there gonna be enough room?
Well, let me finish first, Chet, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Pretty much it. There's a tree that we're keeping, right? Yeah, it's this, you know, higher branches here, pretty significant tree that we're trying to save, and we're able to do that. The retaining wall is gonna allow us to keep that tree. And I think that's it. Did I miss anything, Bob?
No, I don't think so. It's just that we,
Can you guys focus on the mic, because our extensive viewing audience is
Yeah.
missing all your wisdom.
Okay.
I think the only other thing is to mention the pavers between the walkway and the paved area, which would be the parking area that we propose to do a granite curb, would actually be a curbing which would make it a stop for safety reasons, so the car can't drive on the sidewalk.
So a raised sidewalk. Yeah.
And also, I don't get away from this a bit, but also my intentions, which is along with this, is to upgrade the complete building. And this is the existing conditions of it right now, which I'm sure you all know it. And my intention is to put some A-dormers on. The whole building's gonna be sided with a full dormer put on the back, which this is the existing back condition right now. These gas tanks will be gone because I'm gonna put oil heat, is what I'm proposing, instead of the propane. So it's gonna be a complete building upgrade at the same time.
Isn't it time for us to accept the application as complete before we get into
Yeah,
the...
I'd rather do that. I'd rather keep that as a mode now as opposed to getting right into questions, because we get all hung up on ourselves. So to have them, are you guys, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're done. And actually, Mr. Willan, I apologize. I'm not sure if you're the permanent chair now. I addressed a letter to Roseanne Quacks, and apologize if there's a error there.
Oh, well, there you go. You might as well come back next time.
Yeah, I know.
Just
So,
first rule. No, I'm only kidding.
Unless you have any further questions.
We will. I just
Yeah,
want to,
yeah,
I
yeah.
want to get through the, I want to just go through the steps, the correct steps. Do I have a motion to accept this as complete?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the application as complete.
I'll second that.
Chet seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Okay, now we can get into the question and
okay,
answers.
good.
Chet, you had a question?
My question is in regards to your parking, I guess you're going in 60 degrees on those 6 parking spaces. Now, in order for you to, I can see where you could pull in, how are you gonna be able to turn around? Are you gonna back out into Tasker Lane?
Yeah, that's, well, we gotta get to the plan here. Yeah, there are 45 degrees, but yeah, to answer your question, yes, you do have to back out in a Tasker Lane to get out of those spaces. It's an existing condition that's been working okay. It's my understanding. The plan, this parking layout is, as the plan was approved, I believe, in 1998, the existing parking layout.
1990.
Let me take this out. I might have said that date wrong. Is it 1999?
99.
Yeah, okay. So, that today is the existing parking layout.
So the additional 3 will also have to back out into Tasker Lane?
One of them will have to.
One of them will?
Well, it's not so much that it'll have to back out in a Tasker Lane to get out of the parking area, but to get in, it'll have to do like a 3-point maneuver to get into that space. Basically, the scenario is there's really not a lot of width here with this island. Still pretty good distance away from the property line.
And this is one way in, one way out.
That's correct.
Yeah.
The parking area, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, it is,
Yeah.
yeah, as it is pre-existing.
Yeah.
So all 6 spots back out into Tasker Lane?
Yes, as it exists, yeah.
Wow. Go ahead. Bob.
The three angled spots that are there now that you're taking out, what are you doing with that?
Oh, okay. 3 angle spots. We're actually, this overlay doesn't really reflect it, but these are still here.
Okay, okay, gotcha.
Is that your question? Okay,
Yep.
yeah, those are still there. They will still be there
Right.
to remain. Yeah.
If I may, what we're doing is, right now, is, when it was approved in 1999, it was approved for 7 spaces. And this being 6, and then there's 1 parallel space right here. And what we're doing is we propose 3, which 1 taking the place of that parallel plus the 2 additional.
What year was that approved?
1999.
99?
What's the purpose of the sidewalk?
This sidewalk here,
Yeah.
is to provide, basically it's for this car here to be able to get into the walkway.
Yeah, the
If
sidewalk
your
is,
space
it
is-
goes all the way to the door of the front entrance on Main Street.
I guess I was trying to think of, to get you more room for backing out of those spots, is there any way to, I think I understand the reason for the sidewalk now, is to, if you could eliminate the sidewalk and move it closer to you, get your parking spaces closer to the retaining wall. But then there'd be no,
Well, they would
I
have
thought
to-
there's no aisleway on the leftmost, your aisle space 1, there's no, is there an aisle, a walkway adjacent to that?
There is.
There's that area here, but it's not, that's maybe 3 feet wide, 2 feet wide.
About 3 feet was gonna be grassed in. The reason for that is to, just so that not, to alleviate walking on Tasker Lane, because once you get on Main Street, there is a sidewalk there, a town sidewalk. It just save people from walking on Tasker Lane, they could go up the sidewalk.
Yeah.
That's the only reason for that sidewalk and steps.
We did look at
But
an angled parking scenario here, and it just, they end up taking up more room, and I think you can see, even if we started right at the corner of the property line and the entrance, if you just sort of flip these up, you could only fit 2 spaces there. I mean, we'd be happy to give 2 spaces, but I think we need to show 3 to meet the parking the M2 zone parking requirements.
Also, another thing we thought of in the back of our mind, is these, my understanding in M2 zone, there's no setbacks on parking, as far as parking lots. Clay would be able to, and so this could also be, these could all be moved to the boundary line, because they're not on the boundary line right now. There's another probably 5-6 feet.
That probably answers my question in terms of what do you do with the snow?
I have snow removal equipment.
Okay, so you
I
take
have
this,
tractor and tractor.
you take it right out.
Yeah, as I do on my other properties, yeah.
I don't, is, Clay, Lee, you know, is it possible to move those spots to the property line?
Can you give me a minute?
Yeah.
The difficulty of the maneuver to get to this space is that, a car can only turn so sharp. And I did it this afternoon with a little Subaru Impreza, no problem, If someone had a Ford Ranger extended cab, it might be tough, but you basically have to drive. This plan doesn't show the limit of pavement, but there's a limit of pavement right here. You basically have to drive at that, the right edge of pavement to be able to swing around and get in here. So creating more width in this aisle is not going to improve your ability to get to this one space.
Could improve your ability to back out, though.
Yeah, it could have, yeah.
Right, and
Yeah.
you're right, you have to get in, you have to get out. I was thinking more of those cars backing out and avoiding backing out in a Tasker Lane. And it might even, if you give them more, well, you can't, those angle parking lots, you can't do anything but back out.
Yeah, and 5 more feet is not going to get that car enough room to swing out.
No,
We
that's
definitely
right.
considered different options. You have an existing building, you have a property line, and would 5 feet make the situation a little better, yeah, but it's not gonna keep the cars from backing out in Tasker Lane, which is the, you know, that 99 approved plan. Do we think the situation, I'm sorry, do we think that the situation is safe? I think, considering the volume on the road, you know, this acts as a driveway almost for these lots. You know, from my house, I back up onto a busy through road. And backing out into this road that only has 9 lots accessing it, I think it's as safe as you could expect for, you know, residential use.
You almost have also, if I may add, this space here, which is pre-existing, is almost the same situation, and it's easy to come in, but getting out is the same issue as this one, getting out with it.
Yeah.
It's gonna be easy for them to get out, you know,
Yeah, I mean, I understand the concerns, because we have the same ones, but it's an existing site.
Were you able to find?
Yeah, the parking doesn't have to comply with the setbacks in the M1 and the M2 district. However, the thing you need to be concerned about is whether paving up to somebody's property line starts dumping water onto their property.
Mm-hmm. And if it's not gonna gain us a heck of a lot in terms of the dance with the cars here, I guess it's not worth it. Well, I'll leave that to other people, but in my mind, it isn't at this point.
this is what it comes down to. It's not much different than the conditions that are existing.
I guess the other, if you're gonna talk to Dan about the rails, I guess my other concern is, are any of these parking spaces for handicap and handicap access to the building itself?
Yeah, we're right now, we're not showing any handicap spaces. You know, as you know, it would take up another 5 feet of, I'm sorry, it'd end up being a 8-foot aisle to really meet the ADA requirements, 5-foot minimum, or adjacent to the parking space that's a handicap space. One option we talked about is maybe providing as much of a space as we can in this area, because this is an at-grade entrance. I don't see it. Yeah.
That entrance.
This will be the entrance for the new basement
That door
apartment.
is just the existing.
Right there. That is the door on this part of the
It's under
building.
that, yeah.
It's under, yeah, under that. Okay. So providing a ADA space there, you know, may work, but it's not gonna get you access to the upper part.
So in essence, that could be another parking space?
I mean, it wouldn't be a 20-foot long parking space, it might be a 16-foot long parking space. It's not a lot of room right there.
The width is there,
Oh.
but the length is a
Yeah.
little shy.
Right now, people park there, you can go out there and you might see a wheel track. I don't know if it's when people are loading groceries or.
They
or
park
not,
there.
but, yeah. Super flat right now.
And where's the fifth apartment going?
The 5th apartment would be accessed
In the daylight basement.
via the basement, which is this door.
Right here.
Okay, yeah.
Which is right under this.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it
The
would
door would be
be,
right there. And then the base, actually the apartment, it's a daylight basement.
All right.
All daylight unfinished basement.
I was just curious.
There's nobody on Tasker Lane. There's no traffic on Tasker.
The house is for 3 houses.
Will you be putting any more windows in?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Because when I looked at it, it just, right now, just has one window, I think, and then a little well window.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's gonna be all changed to,
He's on one way,
if I may.
Yeah,
Okay. This is, you can see on the side, this is gonna be, this is a new door for the, this is a new window, new door, new window.
Okay,
There's a line, I can show you probably better on the floor plan here that we've proposed in the basement, is there will be window here, which will be an egress size, by code. This will be an egress size. Then you have windows here, door, window, door, and another window here.
okay, that's
So it'll
good.
be quite a bit more
Yeah.
window and daylight down there.
Any other discussions? Questions?
The only question I have is trash management. How is that going to be handled? I'm sorry, I didn't come up with that in my previous comment.
Right now, it is by trash barrels, we empty by hand. I'm proposing to put 2-yard dumpster down there that I have all, like I have in all my other buildings.
And will you be screening that as required? Screening it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. With the wooden stockade fence?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where would that be?
What's that?
Where would you locate it?
Probably right straight, there's room right in this area, straight in this area here. It's not as tight as it shows on this plan, yeah. I think you can see, if I may, this photograph, let me get, I have a better photograph. The problem again is why we have trash cans right now, and I have a person that picks up the cans on a regular basis, is because of Tasker Lane mainly, is trying to get a truck down there. So I noticed the people that pick up the trash for the town, with the contract with the town, they back all the way down the street, which is sort of a hazard with children around too. Better picture here. It's not as clear as I'd like, but you can see the grassed area
Right.
over there. I guess this video will show it better. See, it's very deceiving by the plan, but you can see with the cars parked there, how much room there is. Right here,
All right. Okay. I don't know if anybody else wants to see these.
it's just so that plan is very deceiving.
So this
but-
is where you're backing it out, right?
That's right,
here?
yeah, we're going up there. This is a vehicle's in place right now, and this area is still all
Yeah.
wide open, where if you look at the plan, it looks like the spaces go all the way to the house.
So, the problem, can I ask a question on this?
Sure.
Okay, the problem with this is, and I was gonna ask Clay, in regards to, backing out into Tasker Lane, what happens if you get into an accident, somebody gets hurt, or worse, gets killed? And the town's liable for this. I'd like to say, Alex, somebody to answer this question for me.
Well, I just don't, on a legal note, I cannot
Yeah.
answer it, but, I mean, I don't think it's different than anyone else backing out of their driveway.
It's always that person's fault. There is a state law that says if you back out onto a driveway and you're involved in the accident, the person backing out is at fault, no matter what. But
Well-
I don't think that the town could incur liability by approving this plan, though. And that would be a stretch. But
There's
Chet's point.
it's a good point.
Chet's point's well taken, though, that
Yes.
you don't
Oh,
want to
yeah.
necessarily approve something if you can avoid it.
Most of the, I assume most of you are familiar with the area there on Tasker Lane. Most of the properties which are right here parallel with this entrance here, they don't even have parking. Yeah.
We show the driveways.
Yeah, there's one here, there's none here, and then there's one here. That's a good picture of it there.
But there's 1,000 situations for every minute. Some kid comes zipping down in a bicycle, bang, and the kid gets killed. And that's the situation I'm thinking of. A car hitting another car is something else, but I don't know. There's some other way you could turn those cars around so that they would drive out. I'd feel better about it.
We would too, to be honest with you. Man, we wouldn't be here
To
asking.
be quite honest, you can,
It's a pre-existing
Then,
situation, and it's not changing, you know?
They can't even put a turntable in.
Like in London?
I mean, bizarrely enough, it appears that I was the only person that was there back in 1999 when this was originally approved, making me the old timer on the board, I guess. But this situation is a dramatic improvement over what was there when it went from 3, I think, to 4 units. There was just, people were parking on the dirt, and there was no parking whatsoever. And I do recall the planning board having, if not as long, a longer discussion about how the parking was gonna be situated, and this was the best that that board could come up with at that time.
well, it wouldn't help for the 6 unless you re-angle them. I don't know if you could re-angle them, but you asked, is it possible to ask people in those 3, how you enforce it, I don't know. 3 people in the perpendicular parking lots, if they pull in and back into those, then they come out forward. So you could drive into that lot, pull up enough to back into those 3 spaces. And you wouldn't have your 3-point turn on that other one.
That's actually the easiest way to enter them anyway, is to drive past the entrance and back in.
So at least on the 3, you could alleviate your problem.
How do you enforce that? It's certainly something that can be asked at the time of a lease agreement.
Certainly something
But
to be
it's-
labeled with when you're doing the striping, but
It's just a thought.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to back either coming in or going out, so.
I back into
Yeah, but
parking
they-
spaces all the time, because I can see what's there when I'm backing out, a lot easier, so.
In the coming in, they'd be pulling into the drive and then backing into those spots. So they'd be backing in on their own property versus backing out onto a driveway, but it's only 3 of them. It's just a thought.
Yeah, it's good.
There's no way that they can drive in other than angle it 45. There's no other way they can drive in there.
Right here?
Yes,
Yeah, I mean, what do you mean?
Can
To
they-
do perpendicular?
yes.
I mean, right, there's not room to do the
You
perpendicular.
just can't do it.
That would actually make access to those spaces more difficult unless you provided, greater width than 12 feet.
And that extra 5 feet wouldn't help you to do that.
The regulation for 25-foot width for perpendicular parking is there because it helps the car achieve access. So 5 more feet would bring it to 12 plus 5. I mean, we're up to 17, we're still 8 feet. I mean, would it help? Yes, it would help. But is it gonna prevent cars from getting out, like having to back out on Tasker Lane? That it would not mitigate against that existing condition.
Chet, I've been over there twice, and it seems to me there are many worse places in town as far, I mean, at least this has some sort of a setup. There are many more places that have random parking, like I guess this was before. And most people, I think, most drivers figure out if it's easier to go up and then back in, I mean, it's just, it becomes automatic. So I would say, considering that that part was all considered before, and Tasker Lane is not that busy a street, that, I mean, it doesn't really, as long as people that live there are willing to do it, I would say it's fine.
Depends on how sober you are at night, too.
Well, that's always an
In
issue.
Newmarket, that could be that.
If they're drinking in Newmarket, they can walk home.
How about lighting there? Is there any?
there is
Yeah,
existing, yeah.
Yeah, there's a pair of floodlights on the corner of this building.
And they're on all at night, all night
Yeah,
long?
automatic, yeah, they're on a photo cell, yeah.
And
There's
lighting
actually
at the
one,
entryways.
yeah. There's actually one, they're on this corner, in front of the building, and there's actually one right on the side, right here, it's facing the whole area that we're proposing to,
And they're existing.
existing. They were part of the past approval in 1999.
Does anybody on the board have any other questions before I open up the public? I'll open up the public comment on this item. Anybody in the public have a comment on this? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment. Last call for discussion. Okay, do we have a motion on the waiver to allow a narrower I guess it's drive lane, I'd call it.
Make a motion to grant the waiver for the narrow site.
I'll second that.
Rob seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I oppose.
Chet opposed, I'm sorry. Did you get that, Erica?
Good, thank you.
For a matter of the secretary, I think we should ask for a pose on every vote.
I
So
should.
the secretary can hear it and write it down, otherwise, I think it would be proper to do.
That's fine. You're correct, thank you. Just, usually we're so unanimous, I just skipped over it. Sorry, Leo. I'm sorry, Chet. Have a motion to accept?
I make a motion to accept the site plan as presented.
Do we want to put any conditions on this for the rail? You said you'd put in the granite curbs.
Yeah,
Part of
it's
your
not on the
application.
plan now, but the
You-
final
you-
plan will be granite, yeah.
And the trash?
It'll be either contained through, like, you know, whatever clay, I'll discuss that with him, and willing to go with either dumpster or whatever. I think, personally, I think that if I have a contracted with cans, individual cans, which is not out of the question for 5 units, is safer than having a dumpster, one of those big trucks go down Tasker Lane. I mean, I'm willing to do either.
Well, the discussion, this will become moot if the town council adopts the proposed trash ordinance, which will require dumpsters for all 3-unit or more buildings.
So I'll just go with dumpster.
Okay.
That's the way it is. I could go either way.
Lee, you want to modify your
To include the
dumpster?
dumpster? I don't care. Someone wants to amend it, I won't go do it.
Have a second on Leo's motion, which is to accept the plan.
I'll second the motion.
Deb seconded. Have discussion? I'm going to make a motion to amend it to include putting in the dumpsters. Have a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
Bob has seconded the motion to amend it to include the dumpsters. Any discussion? All in favor? For the amended for the amendment?
Aye.
Any against, opposed? None? Okay, we're back to the motion the motion's been amended to approve it with the dumpsters. Leo did it? I forgot who seconded it.
I think I seconded.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now, you have to assess the impact fees.
Yes.
I
And-
oppose.
Oh, I'm sorry. Chet opposed. I did it again, Chet.
So I would just suggest that you read the last line of my comments on their thing and say,
Thank you.
make a motion to assess the impact fees in accordance with these amounts. That's my suggestion.
Do I have a motion?
I will make the motion that we assess the impact fees. Do I listen? School, for $743, rec for $279, wastewater for $791, water for $475, for a total of $2,287.
Have a second?
Second it.
Leo seconded. Discussion? Put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Chet? One. It was wastewater for $791. I'll repeat them for you. School for $243, rec for $743. Rec for $279, wastewater for $791, water for $475, for a total of $2,287.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I lost my agenda. Ah, thank you. Next on the agenda, notice is hereby given in accordance with RSA 6756 and 6757 for a public hearing for the Newmarket Planning Board to consider an amendment to the master plan. Proposed amendment will be for the addition of a 10-year recreation master plan. The sole purpose of the Newmarket master plan in accordance with RSA 674:2 shall be to aid the planning board in the performance of its duties. The full text of the proposed amendment is available at the town hall and the planning department during normal business hours. And is Jim Hilton, Jim, you presenting, or? I don't know, if we were just,
We submitted the plan to the planning board, and it is available at the town hall. It took us almost a year and a half to put this together. The plan is a good one. We worked with Open Space, we worked with the Conservation Commission, we worked with a committee of 12 people that basically met for over a year and put recommendations together that we'd like to follow and use as a model over the next 10 years so that recreation and open space and conservation will all work in concert with one another. We're asking you to consider this. The council has already accepted it. The school board has accepted it. It's right now under consideration for the Conservation Commission. I believe it will be probably the next meeting will be accepted. And again, we'd like to put some teeth in it with the planning board to accept it.
okay. We've all at least gotten the executive summary. Some of us may have reviewed the entire document. Paul?
Can you have the gentleman, for the record, give his name and address?
Oh, sorry. My name is James Hilton. I'm from 82 Piscataqua Road in Durham, New Hampshire. I'm the Recreation Director for the town of Newmarket.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Any, Chet?
What is this recreation plan supposed to do for our children in this town?
To provide space, indoors and outdoors, as we grow to expand potential for recreation space availability for fields, for open space areas for them to be able to play, and again, to also assure that we'll be able to have indoor space as time goes on. And most of these recommendations were based upon either grants or other type of abilities to be able to offset tax burdens that would be upon the town itself. When we talked to Land Futures Incorporated, we asked that specifically because we knew that a lot of the things that are proposed wouldn't be able to be affordable. So by doing this, we looked at a plan that will allow us to be able to take our capital improvement program, take our revolving account fees that we have from the program, and also use grants and other areas of income that allow us to be able to make these small, modest steps in the next 10 years.
Can I continue a question? Sure, Pat. Yeah, this is fine, Jim. You know, we're gonna have all these fields, we're gonna have all these kids running around by themselves, right? What would have been better for this town than to have our youngsters participating in this Hershey meet at the university this past weekend? Why, if we're gonna have all this stuff happening here, why isn't it happening there? You got 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, which would be perfect to have them up there competing in that meet. And yet we have nothing, or one single Newmarket youngster was participating in that meet.
That's because we don't have a track at this particular point in time.
Track, you need a track. You got fields, you can let them run around the fields.
Well, we also, Exeter has a track, so we worked with Exeter in concert with them to be able to actually provide the Hershey track activity beforehand.
Why can't we do it ourselves?
We can.
Then why didn't we?
Because, again, we opened it up for Exeter, for the people to be able to put that. We even talked about busing the kids, and we had very few participants that were involved because there's so much going on. I think that if you did it as part of the recreation day camp program, you'd have a lot of kids being involved in it.
You know, I hear that. I hear that all the time. I say to the school, people in the school department, why don't we have a math team? Oh, there's too much going on. You say, I say, why can't we have kids competing in this Hershey meet at university? We can walk, we can run over there practically. Too much going on. I keep hearing this. Maybe we got too much going on. We shouldn't build a new school. Maybe we should forget about the fields. Maybe there's too much going on. You know, it gets to a point where people start thinking, what is going on? If you can't do something like this Hershey meet, to me, which would be quite simple for somebody to do for these kids, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds. That really bothers me, to read that, pick up that newspaper and see nothing in there about the Newmarket youngsters. I just can't accept that. There's too much going on.
There's a lot of kids that are involved and want to be involved in track. However, the problem right now is that with baseball and everything else that's going on with activity, and also lack of facility, to even be able to utilize the track in UNH, you have to be part of either the association with the UNH or be part of the Exeter Recreation. To be competitive, which, by the way, back 7 or 8 years ago, I brought almost 130 kids there. But what happened was those kids, when they went in that program, they weren't successful. When they're not successful, they're not going to continue to be successful. To be successful, they got to utilize the same type of track and program that they have. Kids want to be able to be competitive, and the problem is that we don't have the ability to be able to do that.
Well, I haven't read the whole plan. I read the executive summary and I've talked to people who've been involved in it, and it sounds, from the executive summary and the layout, it sounds very good. It is, I'm just trying to recollect, maybe you can help me, Jim. Is one of the items, not necessarily concerned about the meat that we missed, but is one of the items, and I don't recollect if we have an item for trying to establish a track.
It was going to be in concert with the school department again. I think one of the things that you look at with a small town is that you try to utilize the facilities that you have available. By doing activities that we can provide, as well as the school working in concert with them, what happens is you maximum utilize the facility. So it's used a lot, not just, you know, having a track or a quarter track or a 100-yard track. You have a track that you could be used all the time.
No, I understand that. Is that part of the overall master plan?
Yes, in fact, in the master plan itself, near the last page, the master facility, which was called the master recreation facility, has a track that's in it. But as far as a recommendation from the Recreation Master Plan Committee, it recommended that we do it in concert with the school.
Well, I can understand that. I'm fully agree that we need to use all our facilities and maximize them together as a community as opposed to separate entities. And I'm presuming that that's what this was set up on.
Is there a possibility of busing kids to the University of Hampshire and use their facilities?
Yes, yes, there
How are
is.
we doing that?
We can do that. Right now, the problem is that when Durham had a recreation department, they could be, basically, we could be part of that program. But what happened was, when Durham's recreation department folded up, there's no avenue to use Durham's actual track. We'd have to go to Exeter's track because we don't have that avenue that's available. Is it possible? Yeah. Right now, the Durham Recreation Conservation, the Conservation Department, no, the Recreation Commission is looking at doing things like that. So we could conduit with that. But at this point in time, Durham isn't an option. Exeter is the option, and that's why we tried to work with Exeter and try to also have busing that was available. But again, the times were wrong. That's the other thing is a lot of times it's not the question of not people being able to utilize the facility. It's the times that you utilize the facility, whether it's in the evening or whether it's in the afternoons in the heart of the sun. It depends on when it is. Again, it's almost $650,000 to be able to put a track in. Almost, if, in fact, some tracks are even more than that. There's a track right now that's being proposed in Durham that, from the running group, and they can't even be able to put that together because they don't have enough money to do that. Plus, it didn't look feasible because the Durham track that they put in itself. But even then, Durham has a premium time that they can use it, and that's it. So that's a problem.
Now, the Exeter track is the Academy's track, right?
That's correct, but the Recreation Department has time that they buy from them. Yeah.
Question,
Leo.
who was on this Recreation Master Plan Committee?
Chris Hawkins was the chairman. Bill Archerry. Let's see. Lee Estelle. There was about 12 members that were the town members themselves.
Planning board members?
I don't believe so.
I thought the master plan started from the planning board and works up through it. I guess this sort of came in backwards
Right.
rather than.
We put on, we opened it up for individuals that were interested in being part of that. There were conservation, there were open space, and there was recreation. And there were also people from the Newmarket Youth Athletic Association, Mary Jensen, Beth Rowe. The school was involved with Randy Edgley.
Did your department take a survey of the youngsters in the town, or who would be interested in doing something like this?
We did. In fact, in track rated fairly high. There was a lot of different places that activity. Swimming was very, very high. We did one of every 3 residents that were on the mailing list and got back out of that group, out of the 3,000, we got around 600.
I want to make sure I don't keep my back to anybody. Any other questions, comments? Clay, do you have any?
I think it's a great document. I think it states the issues related to recreation. It presents a lot of options. It's what a master plan is supposed to be.
But what is our function as part of this? Is it, are we supposed to be recommending, approving, or
Well,
doing what?
it was, when I talked to Jim about it, and when I reviewed the document and thought it was a good document, I thought it seemed to make a reasonable, it's reasonable that it be a part of our master plan as the planning board, because it talks about what the town needs, and it's based on the same kind of construction as the traditional idea of what a master plan is.
And isn't it normally the master plan starts in the planning board and goes up through the master plan process and then goes to the various entities for their suggestions, recommendations, and whatever? Is that the way the normal master plan function works?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know what your definition of normal is. I've seen several towns do it that way and never even open their master plan. I mean, I would ask all of you how many times you've referred to the master plan when you review these applications. So the question of how a master plan is constructed is less relevant than how it serves the board in terms, as the notice states, in your day-to-day decisions, and how it supports the town's actions in acquiring grants, how it supports the town's actions in setting impact fees, CIPs, and plans for looking for what the recreation needs are of the committees. I think a lot of times, yeah, it does start with the planning board, but if there's a specific issue that's confronted by a specific group of people, and the document has raised itself to the level that it's valid as a portion of the master plan, then I think it's reasonable for the planning board to assess it.
Well, that's a good, just for my own edification, Jim, how did this all develop? How did you get to do the master plan? What instigated it?
First of all, there was a master plan part that was done back, 10 years ago, that actually has a recreation component. As individuals came in, what happened was there were lots of needs that were asked, but what I wanted to find out was exactly what did the town want to do. You know, so instead of special interest groups coming in wanting this and wanting that, to find out exactly what the town was. And then to devise a plan that was independent of the recreation director to be able to focus it on for the next 10 years so that we can make those growths and do those kind of things. The recreation director a lot of times is looked at as the person that, you know, comes up with all these grandiose ideas. That wasn't what I was interested in. I was interested in the individuals giving us ideas, professionals being able to provide the reason why we to do it, and then follow it as a plan.
I know a lot of times having a master plan in place for a town or city will enable them to get certain grants. Will this enable you to get more recreation grants?
Yes, it already has. In fact, the $30,000 that we spent, right now, we have a $100,000 grant that's on the table for Land Water Conservation Fund, so we've more than made our money back.
Was there any grants this year for something like this, so you could take kids to the university for that meet?
Yes, there is funding now for some type of transportation. We're working on that. We're also looking at possibly being able to work together with another department too, small departments like Epping, or with that don't have that ability to be able to do that together in concert with one another, and then rent the space from UNH. And again, it's my hope that the Durham Recreation Commission will allow them to expand so that we can do it with them, because that would be the smartest thing and be the closest place to go.
When you say rent space, rent it from UNH or rent the track in,
Rent a track at UNH.
is
Yeah.
that feasible?
Yes, but again, it would have to be done through the town.
Having been out there a few times, they seem to be very delicate about who they want on it. and all.
That's right. So the Durham Recreation Commission would have to do that in concert with us and invite us so we could go together as a team.
Any other discussions, questions for Jim? I'll open this up to public comment. Does anybody have any public comments? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment. Look for a motion to accept this as a amendment to the master plan.
I make a motion that we accept the recreational master plan as amendment to our master plan.
I second it.
Bob seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Good job. Next on the agenda. Dwayne Ruggles, hopefully I said that right. Care of Irving Oil Co-op, public hearing for an application for minor site plan at 78 Exeter Street, tax map U4, Lot 3, B1 zone. The proposal is to reimage the existing Irving service station, including canopy, fascia, and signs, dispenser graphics, building fascia and sign, under canopy lighting, and pylon sign. Yes, sir.
Hello, good evening. I'm Mike Tierney. I'm a construction engineer with Irving Oil. We're here tonight to follow up to last month's meeting and to address a minor site plan review. As a follow-up to last month's meeting, the two largest issues that came out of that meeting were the concerns with the roof line, the canopy roof line, as well as our proposed LED lighting around that canopy. We were asked to go back and look at some of the options, that what we could do with that roof. Let's see. Oh, is this what we can use?
Yeah, you have to move it closer up for the camera.
All right,
I just don't know if you're going to be picked up on the mic, though.
let's see, here we go. Okay, so we went back and looked at it. I know everybody in every town really wants to see the colonial-type canopies that are being built and, you know, currently are being asked to be built today. Given the fact that we've already got this existing canopy there, the only thing that we'll be allowed to do with the existing structural steel is this proposed mansard. Again, it's a false roof, it's not gonna be a full roof, it'd just be a mansard around three sides of the canopy, this side, the front, and the other. We're limited to being able to do this because the existing structural steel will not support a full roof load. We would have to literally tear down the entire canopy, pull the foundations out, put new foundations in, build a new canopy. You know, the cost to us to do something like that It's really just completely cost prohibitive. If you're looking at ripping down a perfectly good $100,000 canopy to construct another $80,000 to $100,000 colonial style canopy. What we are proposing is to do this mansard two different ways. The first option would be to take down the existing fascia, which is 54 inches in height. Take that fascia completely down on 3 sides, install 3 feet of fascia around, and then put our new fiberglass FRP fascia up on that canopy and then build the mansard off of that. Otherwise, we could leave the existing canopy fascia, just add our proposed FRP fascia, new fascia, to the existing fascia that's there and just go over what's there more or less, and then build the mansard up onto that. Essentially, this costs us, this proposed work's gonna cost us in excess of $20,000. This work will cost us $20,000. This work will cost us as much as $40,000. Those are the two options that we have. Anything outside of these 2 options isn't an option for everyone. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, it's just completely cost prohibitive. We'd have to rip the whole site apart, be out of business, and just wouldn't work. So these are the 2 options that we are proposing. With respect to addressing the canopy roof lines, this isn't gonna work.
Next meeting, we'll be holding classes in advance of the meeting to teach people how to use it.
No, it's just gonna-
You better go too, Clay.
All right, okay. So anyway, that's that was the first issue with the roof. I can just kind of open it up for questions.
What else are you proposing to do with this? Then we'll accept it, and then we'll open the discussion.
With-
What else is you're besides the canopy, you're also proposing to, I would go through the whole thing for your whole plan, and then we can ask you questions.
Oh, okay.
The lighting, the coloring, your signage.
Oh, everything, okay, all right. So then the other issue that came out of last month's meeting, just to stay on track with that, was to try to get some nice shots of what we're proposing, what's existing. What's existing today is this. This is an actual shot of the site today, and this is what an actual shot, what would it would look like when we're done at night. We feel that the light that exists today is much more intrusive. We know it is. It draws much more energy, 3 times the energy. This is 1/3 less energy. It's, again, it's much less intrusive. The LED band the purpose is to draw attention to the canopy fascia, but we feel it does so in a much less intrusive way than the existing PAPI lighting, fluorescent lighting around the building. In the dispenser area, this is the dispenser area as it exists today. You can see we've got lots of stuff there. We've got all this large self-service signage. That's all going to go away. And then we've got all this merchandising that we're doing out there. We're no longer going to do the merchandising out at the island. We're not going to do it on sidewalks in front of the store either. Not anything that's going to be intrusive or impede on pedestrian walkways. And then this is what it'll look like when we're done. We're going to add this dispenser shroud. It's a much cleaner look. It's not cluttered. It's a lot easier for people to fuel, get in and out and around the dispensers. And again, we're going to lose all this self-serve signage up here, so it's going to be a much cleaner, easier look. Again, we're going to lose a lot of signage. Let's see, the fascia, I've already pretty much showed you what that's going to look like, but again, all this PAPI lighting, the fluorescent lighting all around that, actually we call it eyebrow lighting, and that draws attention to the Irving fascia, the logo, and to our site. That's all going to go away. And again, it will either look like this, or or like this, which this is a cleaner look. This would be a lot more money to Irving Oil, but again, we would do this if the board required versus this, which is what we originally proposed. Let's see, and then on the store, this is how it looks today. And the yellow, I know people have a problem with the yellow, but that's what we're proposing. And that's our image, that's our brand, and we're sticking to that. So this is today, this is after. And the one last thing really was a non-issue. Existing sign today, basically, we're just sticking with the same sign, we're painting the poles white, and we're just replacing the faces. We're not increasing the square footage, we're just changing the faces. So it's really a non-issue. That's already
Leave the
been.
gas prices the same on the sign?
No, that part don't work.
Oh, all right.
I know Ms. Berger would love that, but
Yeah.
that's not,
Yes, she
it's not
would.
gonna happen.
You and Deb been talking?
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the scope of work.
Do I have a motion to accept?
I make a motion to accept the application is complete.
I'll second that.
Chet seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, now we'll ask the questions.
Okay.
I'll save mine to the end. Go ahead, Deb.
I appreciate all the effort that you put into trying to make these changes. What I was curious about, when I was talking about a more colonial look, I was talking about the store part versus the pump part. Now, I was at the Stratum store today, and the store part has a roof line. That's
Like a hip roof on the store
Yes.
part?
Now, rather than spend them, now, I'm assuming it's just a fake roof, it's just for effect, right? It doesn't serve any purpose.
On the
except-
canopy?
Oh,
Yes, no.
No, on the store. On the stores, at the Stratum store, where the store itself has like a gabled roof.
No, that's the real roof.
I know, but I mean, it doesn't serve any purpose other than aesthetic.
There's no office up there.
Nothing.
Right,
It's not
yes,
functional, yeah.
yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes, exactly.
So that was what I was looking to see, not so much,
Okay, then we misinterpreted you. I thought you were asking us to address the canopy.
the canopy that is, I mean, the canopy is a canopy. But the building itself is now kind of squat and flat versus the other that is more colonial looking.
So you'd be looking for us to do
To the
something
building,
with the roof line to the building.
yeah. And I don't know how that affects
We could,
the cost versus how much it costs for you to do the canopy. I mean, with the lighting that you're proposing on the canopy, I don't have a problem with that now. It's the building, I would love to see it with a roof, better roof line, and to perhaps not have that bright yellow strip. If you could make it all the colonial yellow instead of the bright yellow strip, I'd be happy as a clam. Except for the price of the gas.
I think what I could offer tonight is that I could go back and look at my options, like I did on the canopy, for the roof lines, and obviously I'd have to look at the building structure itself and understand from a code perspective what I could and couldn't do with what's there today, and understand those costs before I could answer
Right.
or present any options. With respect to the yellow band, that's the image, and I think that's really,
They don't have one in Stratum.
It's yellow.
It's all pale yellow.
it's all pale yellow.
Yep.
You mean the
The whole
building,
thing,
the same color as the
Yep.
building?
no stripe.
You say stripe, you mean right at the top?
But they don't
Yeah.
have, yeah, it's a different building too, it's a
Well, it's
different,
basically that building with a different roof.
it's not, it's a different, I don't think it's really, it's not this home plate style building. I think the structure is a little different.
Well, maybe the structure's a little different, but I think it's a nice look that it's all that pale yellow instead of the mustard on the top.
Goes with the hot dog being sold.
Yeah. But if you could see what you could do about that, I would be very happy. And the lighting, I'm happy with the lighting, and the pumps look sort of odd with those boomerang things on the side, but, that's okay. It's the building that I have an issue with. I think it would look really, it would add to the way the town looks if it had a better roof line.
I'd be glad to go back and revisit the building and let you know what
That'd
we'd
be
be
great.
willing to do.
Okay, thank you.
I think we've got to get the rest of the board's feelings too on this, to see whether, I don't think we want to rebuild the whole building because of one person's view, whether other people have concerns. I don't have that much of a concern of, to rebuild the whole building for the changing the pitch of the roof or give it gable roofs. I guess that's, I think we ought to get the consensus of the board before we go off into a direction, then we find out we want to go off into another direction later.
Well, I'd be interested to know if it's feasible.
Pardon?
I'd be interested to know if it's reasonably feasible. I think it, and I guess,
if you wanna
and
spend
before,
enough money.
even if it was reasonably feasible, I'd like to see what the look, if you could, like you did here, give an impression of what that look would be.
You know what, it really just comes down to snow loads and structure, and it just adds so much cost to it. Just when you're trying to, versus a new building versus trying to modify something like that, then you've got to, it just makes it so much, you've got to add steel, you got to do things you normally wouldn't have to do, and it just doesn't. I mean, I'll certainly go back and look at it, but just off the top of my head, I think it's going to be, quite expensive.
Yeah, it's a retrofit. That's no doubt
The
about it.
retrofit, that's the hard part, right. And you've got to get the roof to, the roof's going to have to work with the building, what we call a home plate design, and that's what makes it hard, because I can't necessarily design a hip roof that's going to work with that building, so the roof's going to be kind of funky. You're going to have a lot of valleys, and it's just going to get expensive, I can tell just by looking at it.
Yeah, Leah's right. I don't know. All right. I'm trying to get a good idea of what that mansard would look like. I'm not even sure that mansard adds anything to it.
I don't think it really gets you to, where you want to be from a colonial perspective, but we were just trying to work with you, and those were the two options we come up with, that we could actually do something.
Now,
We don't want to do either, but
the canopy in option 1 is 20-some odd inches.
this is a 36-inch fascia, which is that's our normal fascia. But we have existing canopies, like the one that's there tonight, that's 54 inches. So what we typically do is we just put the fascia in between, and we leave these
A
two
border.
spaces white. A border, top and bottom white.
I sort of like the option 1 where the fascia's,
Would you mind passing that around so I could see some of it? Thanks.
while those are being passed around, you mentioned this last time, you mentioned it here again, that when the pumps are put in, there'll be no merchandising there or merchandising in the front. All right? Because I'll ask that's a commitment you're gonna make to us tonight. Because the two or three that I've seen, and I went over to Epping last night, I've driven by Stratham, I don't know if the pumps have changed yet, but the one in Seabrook, all had merchandising around it.
They're going to merchandise on the sidewalks if they're permitted to do it.
This was merchandising at the pumps. Merchandising at the end of the pump aisles over in Epping. So I'd like it to be clear, because I think we all here agree that we don't want the merchandising in the aisles. At least, that's my opinion. Now, the board can discuss it, but the 2 or 3 I've seen, that hasn't been the rule. The other question I have is the sign that you showed with the low gas prices. I know you can't leave them there. But that showed Irving, Blue Canoe, and the prices.
That's correct.
And that's all it's going to be on that sign?
That's all it's going to be, and as you can see, this Irving is larger now. It's going to be small. All we're going to do is take away some of this.
Okay, because again, over in Epping, there's more on that sign. There's bakery, deli, ATM, all below.
Every sign is different for every site.
Is that true? Okay.
Every
But this sign will be like that.
This sign, this is how it's gonna look. All we're doing is changing the faces, and we're not changing the size, anything else. We're just gonna paint the poles white, and put new faces in the poles.
Okay.
Same size, same everything. Except the only thing is, the difference in the faces is that the Irving is a lot bigger now. It's gonna be smaller to allow for the blue canoe.
Right, but there's no, I mean, we're not gonna put any other advertising, other things underneath that.
No, that's it.
And, I did have another question on one of your drawings. On 11 by 17 you submitted, I guess it's plate 13? Yeah, plate 13. Proposed building side elevation. I'm having a hard time reading it, but it says snap lock wall signs. What are they?
Snap block wall signs mounted on the side of the buildings. Some towns allow them, some don't, but they would mount on the side of the building. I don't have a photo. I don't know if you've seen them, but they're about this size, actually. And they work just like this. They have a snap block, and they take inserts and put them in and out. You know, hot dogs, 2 for $99, whatever. And basically, it's a sign. I think it's a little bit smaller than this board, somewhere, somewhere in that size. And they're merchandising signs. They mount on the building. They have this exact type of application where they'll take,
Yours hold better than ours though, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. They're newer.
I mean, I have a question on that. I don't know if I like the idea of the snap lock signs. Again, that's something the board consider and discuss. I prefer to have the building a cleaner look on the side of the building.
Well, I think, yeah, that issue's gonna be handled through the zoning.
Is that,
Yeah,
well,
and- and-
maybe I should have asked that question instead of posing it that way, but I'd like that question to be thought of at the zoning.
Well, I mean, it gets into a difficult, you can address things that are related to aesthetics ostensibly, unless they're regulated, I think, in another way. And I think that the sign ordinance regulates this. I think that what you'll find, however, is in furtherance of that, is the sign ordinance is more restrictive than you're about ready to be, because this issue was brought up when the original site plan was approved back in the 90s, and the ZBA at that time ruled that the front was, because it's a home plate design, the front was unfortunately that smallest portion, and they're only entitled to 10% of that area, which comes out to like 36 square feet. So the blue canoe sign pretty much chews up the amount of wall signage they're allowed to have. And that's, that was the decision made back in 97, 5, I don't know, before my time. So the signs, basically, I guess what I'm saying is that the signs will have to be handled through the sign ordinance, which is through
That's
the
fine.
code enforcement officer.
I'll go to
But I
ZBA,
think
I'll make my note.
in trying to make an anticipatory of how it's going to fall out, it's probably going to fall out that those snap signs are not going to be permitted because of the way the building is oriented.
Now would go for my other issue on the pylon sign as well then, I guess.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the board? I'll open it up to the public. Anybody in the public want to make a comment on this application? I can't see behind the board, so if anybody's standing behind that board raising their hand.
Doesn't look like it.
Nope. Okay, I'll close the public comment. Do I have a motion? Is there anything else we want to discuss in terms of, hang on a minute, lighting?
I guess we all looked at the two options on the, we had a local thing on which option 1 or option 2 was, and I guess, where did it go to?
Sorry. Right there.
I guess here, we preferred option 2, I guess. What does the rest of the board, would they prefer option 1 or option 2?
I said I'd prefer option 1 because it's a less It's not as wide a fascia, it's 36 inches versus your 54. I think it's not as, in my opinion, not as obtrusive. The LED lighting that was a question before, is that strip lighting that's in the middle of that fascia?
That's correct.
I just think it doesn't stand out as much.
Right, which is, these are just 2 night shots. That's actually.
The LED might, but the whole I'm talking about the whole canopy not standing out as much. That's my opinion.
That bottom night view, is that option 1 or 2?
This would be option 2. Option 1, I mean, I'm sorry.
Option 1?
Yep. I mean, it's pretty much would be the same thing, other than you're gonna have the white. Fascia's gonna be wider.
I guess any other board members have any preference of option 1 or option 2?
I like option 1 without the mansard, the fake mansard.
Right.
Yeah, I agree, I should have said that, I agree. I don't think, I think,
I agree with
I don't
you
think the
myself.
mansard is worth it.
Right. That would be our preference as well.
I mean, it's a canopy, it's not,
Understood. We're just trying to work with you.
I agree too. Just to throw that out there.
What we'll do is when we go to move this, we'll make it a condition that we'll use option 1 and see what the vote goes. How's that? In terms of Deb's concern, I think Leo had a good point, see what the other members liked about whether it's worthwhile to go back and ask Mr. Senior to go back and look and see the possibility of a roof line on the building itself. Anybody have any other comments on that discussion? Okay, Bob?
I'm in agreement with Leo. I think that it'll be cost prohibitive and probably require another hearing.
Yeah, I've come to that conclusion as well. Anybody else?
I kind of agree with Leo. Same reason.
In terms of complying with section 321, which is the architectural part of the site plan review, does anybody have any comments? I mean, it's still a gas station, sorry.
No, understood.
Can't make it any different at this point. I think, my opinion, it improves the look, especially if we stick to no merchandising in the aisles. But again, that's my opinion at this point. Any other discussions?
there's no chance of getting one-tone yellow without the two-tone effect?
What are our options, Frank?
The sign mounts, the building sign mounts into the canopy fascia.
Right.
So that would be a structural obstacle we have to.
Why is that?
I'll just come up here.
Yeah, that's fine. Frank Daniels, brand manager for Irving Oil. This sign, this piece here has got a little bit of a arc to it, and the sign was actually engineered to come out from that, so that the structure not only adds the color, but it also supports the sign, and it was.
What about spray paint?
Well, it's not so much the color, it's the actual structure that holds the sign into place. So what we'd have to do is, we could look at a modified, smaller section, possibly, of fascia band versus a full section across the three sides.
Yeah.
What we're concerned is the two-tone effect. You got that bright yellow and the dull yellow.
Correct.
We prefer all dull yellow.
Right. The, make myself clear, the dark yellow part holds the sign in, basically. It's engineered that way. So what I'm suggesting is looking at, and I'm not sure what building materials behind here either, but using, this is a
We could carry this color, what he's suggesting
picture of home
is,
plate. This is a short part of it, and then these are longer bands. Maybe we could modify the longer bands such that we only have the shorter
I'm
band.
not saying you know, I understand your problem. You got something fabricated,
Right.
okay? But that stuff is paintable.
yeah, but
Same
it's,
color as the lower part of the wall.
Well, we could do that, but we'd still want to do where the sign is, just that,
You want a brighter yellow where the sign is.
where that, like where you walk in.
Yeah.
It's like an
Just
8-foot
on
it's like
that-
an 8-foot section.
Right, so we'd want to keep the yellow there.
That's better.
All right, so we could look at just keeping, like Frank said, this part, and then on the two offsets, we could go with that color somehow. We don't know what the fascia exactly would be, but it'd be that color.
We'd have to have it fabricated that color, right?
We could do that.
That's good.
Any other discussion on that point?
And option 1, you said, is cheaper for you than option 2,
No,
right?
option 2 is cheaper for
Oh,
us.
option 2 is cheaper.
Yeah. Option 1, we have to take down the existing fascia.
Yeah.
Put up new fascia, then put our FRP over that.
Gotcha.
So option 1's actually gonna cost us.
Because you're at 52 right now, 52 inches. We could-
Basically, we're gonna take the existing fascia and just go right over it with this, and then we just gotta paint
Yeah.
these 2 strips. Whereas now, we've gotta take down
Take
these,
down and put,
and then put a new fascia up, ACM metal fascia behind this, and then put this on top of it.
gotcha.
But on your night shot there, someplace, somewhere, you did that.
We've done both.
Oh, so it's not
This is, actually, that location is Biddeford, Maine, which was built probably similar
Yeah,
layout, about 2 years after the Newmarket site.
See, we've got different size fascias everywhere. We've got 40, 42, 54, 36, so we've got different options to apply to them, but obviously the cheaper option for us is to go over the existing versus taking down good fascia, metal fascia, and then putting up new metal fascia, just the right size to fit our FRP. So,
But you're saying option 1 without the mansard is,
option 1 without the mansard is a much better, cleaner look, and
Yeah.
it's gonna cost us more just because we have to take down fascia that's already there, but I think it works for both of us in the end anyway, because it's a cleaner look. It just costs us more. If we tried to do that at every site, obviously you draw the line in the sand somewhere, otherwise the entire program would be cost prohibitive, you know?
Does anyone know what we've sort of are leaning towards? I wouldn't even know what kind of motion to make in regards to all these discussions.
Well, I'll take an attempt at it. I'm not supposed to make the motion, but I'll take a shot at it. Is that fair?
If anybody's willing, I'm not.
We confused you, Leo? I'll make a motion. Let's get the wording straight now. To accept the Irving Oil Corporate, Dwayne Ruggles, care of Irving Oil Corporation at 78 Exeter Street. Proposed replacement, hang on here,
Reimage.
reimage, thank you, with the following conditions. That the canopy be a 36-inch canopy, be what Mr. Tierney has explained as option 1, which is a 36-inch canopy without the mansard. That the pump area have no merchandising in it. That the building be all colonial yellow, except for the approximately 8-foot section above the door where the blue canoe sign is. And I think hang on for a second. I'll amend that to say no merchandising at the pump island and in front of the store is what I think you said. And I'm assuming that the signage will be taken care of by the zoning board. So that's the end of my motion. Did you get that all, Erica?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I could repeat it again. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Deb, second. Do I have discussion? No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No opposed.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Well, welcome.
You guys are dealing with the ZBA on the light issue, right, on the LED?
Well, on the LED,
Any more items?
his position was, and I believe you addressed it last time, Clay, was that his job was to bring it to the board's attention. It was a different, within that bylaw, it was a different type of light. It was still I forgot exactly how he
High
phrased it.
intensity.
High-intensity light, but he felt technically it was a high-intensity light, but it wasn't his place to make a decision. I think he was more or less putting it to the board to say whether or not they approved it,
Which board?
this board.
You guys. Well, his desire was to make sure that the whole visual effect was taken into account, not just that one item, I believe, that should
That was the way he presented it to
We
us.
wanted the board to look at the full visual.
He
impact.
personally didn't have a problem with it, but he said it was his job to,
All right, well, then we need to discuss it, because it was my I'm sorry to hit this at the last minute, but I thought he provided you with an interpretation on the ordinance that you then needed to deal with the ZBA, because there's two, you know.
okay, well, then then maybe it does, is that a separate path we need to take with the ZBA, just for the LED?
Yeah, I mean, the only other alternative is that we deal with this issue at the plane. I mean, the thing I'm concerned about is I understand this thing with the lighting and everything, but the thing I'm concerned about is that there are residential areas nearby there, and the light is intense, and the thing is that is the LED on the back of the canopy?
No, it's just gonna be on the two sides and the front.
In the front.
We're not doing anything on the
It's that
back.
red line.
It's the red line, yeah.
I'm sorry, could you bring up your
Yep.
picture again?
Yep.
I interpret it as the red line that goes in the
It
middle of
is,
that
it's
blue
this,
page.
this is what it is, right there.
Exactly it.
That's the red line right there.
That's
Have you seen an LED light? You can
maybe.
see them from a mile away.
I'm not arguing with what you're asking, I'm just telling you what I.
I mean, this light, I don't think is gonna be any more.
I just want you,
And-
decisions get made here and the phone calls hit my office. And that's what we're talking about here. I want to be able to explain to the people who call and say, what in God's name is going on down there? I'm saying, here's the number of the planning board members and you can talk to them about it. I just want you guys to be able to, I want it on the record what's going on here so that I can say that the planning board approved it. Because the way my previous understanding was that the LED light was not included because that was an issue being confronted by the ZBA. Now it seems to me that the planning board has approved the LED light in accordance in the canopy, which is fine. I can pass that on to Dan. I just want it clarified. Because then maybe Dan will retract, to the extent his opinion contradicts with that, he may retract it.
Just to address one point you make, like that, the neon, the number of candle lights on that front now, you definitely can see that further away than the red. And
Well, the foot candles, yeah, and I mean, it's no more intrusive than,
floodlight. We have basically a giant floodlight right now across the whole thing that,
it's gonna be less intrusive, certainly for any neighbors. The existing conditions will be much less intrusive than, yes, you can see it, but the lighting itself will
Right.
be.
and then the residential sign will be black.
And I understand that you're improving the situation. The concern that I have is that canopy would not be approved under our current regulations, especially under our current lighting regulations. So the real question here is less, and I commend you, you are improving the site. The question is this planning board is setting a precedential decision on the application of these LEDs. And so every single person that comes in after them with the LED lights, go right ahead. Because you're saying it's okay. And that's fine with me if that's what you're saying.
I don't think necessarily we're saying it's okay in all instances. I think it's saying, at least from what we're saying, in this application, this amount of it is acceptable.
Okay.
Could you repeat that for me, Leo?
I mean, if they come up with 20 of these things around, I don't think that is necessarily gonna be approved because a single one was approved.
Okay, I'm asking you, that's what I'm asking, is some clarification, because everybody wants to know from me what the planning board's gonna say and what they're gonna do. And if I can point to previous decisions and records and say, here's what they did, they talked about this thing, go home and read the minutes, and there you have your answer. And so, right now, we're setting new ground here with interpreting our lighting regulations and our and your concerns with respect there too. And so I need to be able to say, yes, the planning board's felt in certain circumstances LED lights are appropriate, and here's one where it was found to be appropriate. And I just want to confirm that that's what you're saying.
Can I look at your picture again, please?
Sure.
To summarize what you're saying is different, yes, less, yes. So,
Correct.
so it's,
That's,
I get,
If that bumps that ordinance.
you're right.
We have a lighting ordinance, should we abide by it for everyone?
Well, that's what Clay's bringing up here.
It's prohibited by the ordinance, zoning ordinance. Shouldn't it go to the ZBA?
We're not following the lighting ordinance.
I don't know, Dan said, Clay said something different, you know, I didn't-
yeah. I don't have a problem either way you rule. I just want it to be clear in the record so that I know what way you're ruling.
My impression of this from our notes coming into this meeting was that that the LED was a zoning board decision and not ours.
Right.
So if that's not the case, then
It may be, and we can deal with that later, but I've heard comments from some of you say, oh, I don't think the LED is that much of a problem tonight, and so I guess I'm trying to find out, is that really what you're saying? And, okay, because,
I mean, I just, you know, I know it's not apples and apples, but I think it's, you know, the drugstore right across the street or diagonally across the street has.
which is what led to the lighting ordinance,
Okay.
because it's so
Yeah,
egregious.
right, so I mean, this is less intrusive than that, and those are large, you know, neon channel letters.
Right.
I mean, those things, if anything's gonna bother the neighbors, I think that's probably what does. And this is an LED lighting, it's a different type of lighting, it's,
Right, I mean, you guys, it's growing pains. It's the first time anyone's ever been and proposed it.
Yeah.
You know, we fought with neon people all the time, and, you know, and
right, understood.
so it's,
And the reason I asked Mr. Cheney to pull that out again is I guess I looked at the overall effect of what was happening here. Now, granted, maybe I don't understand how far you can see that thin red line, but from those two views, I think the bottom one is less obtrusive overall from what we have. That's my opinion. And so I was looking at the overall effect. And whether that was LED lighting or other kind of lighting, that's what I was basing my opinion on. And I guess if people come to you and decide, I mean, I'll give you what I think I would say, is that's how we judge this application on its overall effect to the area. I don't know if that's sufficient for you or not, Clay, or,
it is.
oh, and then for that matter, to anybody else on this board. I mean, I'm just one opinion here at this point. Go ahead, Rob.
I agree with that, and I think that the other half, the last part that should be added to George's comment is we based it upon what was there too. So we compared it to itself as being an
Before and
improvement.
after, that's right.
So
An improvement.
a new LED, we may not be as happy to accept.
I think it has to be taken into account in the overall appearance that's being presented, just not on the merits of that's how I judge it, whether I'm LED or not. And I think that's how, I'm speaking for the board, but anybody else can jump in, is I think that's how we approached it.
Oh, we've already voted on this, haven't we?
Well, I think Clay was,
Yeah, I know, Clay's making his point, which I think is well worth it.
I also think he was asking if we think if we had to, but. Okay, any other questions, discussions? Clay?
Nope, I'm fine, thanks.
All set? Thank you very much.
thank you very much.
Take a couple more items. 5-minute break.
looking at here.
Wait to see if Clay gets back.
Buildings, they have to have a business in them, right?
Yeah.
This is a business area.
Business
They
park,
can't be
no.
all condos, can they?
The business.
Keep this moving along, I'll let Clay just come back in. Next item on the agenda, there'll be a public hearing for an application for the site plan requested by Wentworth Douglas Hospital at 60 Exeter Street, tax map U4 Lot 11-3 B1 zone. The proposal is for a 10,500 square foot medical office building to be sited within the Newmarket Business Park condominium. Full application is on file at the Newmarket Planning Office at the Newmarket Town Hall and available for viewing during normal business hours. Do I have someone from the applicant?
Good evening. I'm Art Guadano with AG Architects. Here tonight with me are several people. Dan Dunn from Wentworth Douglas Hospital, Norman Hine from Wentworth Douglas Hospital, and Nate Allison from TF Moran. And Nate will present a few items this evening as well. I thought I'd just give a brief presentation. This is essentially a continuation of the approval that had been given before for the Newmarket Business Condominium on Route 108. The original plan was essentially a site plan with 3 building pads, but no buildings and no users. We're apparently the first user, and so we need to come back and present what we're planning for the building. The first plan here, which is a little bit small, and I have some colored ones that'll pop out better, but it shows the overall site, and I'll point out just a few key features. 108 is down here. The fence comes in here, and there are 3 building pads. Pad number 1, pad number 2, and we're at pad number 3 right here. There is, the previous approval included both the building pads and the parking arrangement. There are several changes at the time when this was approved. It just assumed the size of a building. What we're presenting tonight is a medical office building geared towards a family practice. When we first sat down with the hospital and we looked at what does a family practice need, both in terms of the hospital's plans and to function properly, we identified several things. One was they anticipate it's going to be 2.5 providers, 2 physicians, a provider. Not everybody's there at the same time, that's why I say 2.5. Plus exam rooms to accommodate those patients. The floor plans that I'm showing here, this is the first floor plan, Route 108 down to this side, and the parking area up in here. The floor plan has what we found as we developed the plan to accommodate the family practice was we needed about 4,800 square feet to accommodate exam rooms, waiting room, business reception, all the things that happen within a space. The original pad was a little bit smaller. So we did have, and we're sensitive to the concerns that we've heard about from the previous approvals. So we looked at several solutions. We located some of the elements on a lower level, below grade. The staff break room, staff toilet. Those are located on a lower level, down below. Also included in this is not just a family practice, but also some diagnostic facilities such as an X-ray, possibly ultrasound, possibly blood draw. And those would be those diagnostic facilities would be located on the lower level. That's where some of the square footage increase is in that lower level. Additionally, we do show a second floor that's both the basement and the second floor are pretty much within the footprint of the original pad. The second floor, we anticipate that there may be some specialists. It takes time to develop and grow a practice. We're not sure who those specialists may be over time, whether it's an OB or a PT facility. So at the same time that we'd be building the facility, we'd be building the space to accommodate those other elements. To give you an idea of the size, as I said before, to fit this practice with the things we needed here, we were about a little over 4,800 square feet. The lower level is about 2,800 square feet, as is the second floor. It adds up to a total of 10,500 square feet. The building itself, in terms of what we've designed, is we've tried to bring in several historical elements from the community. One is the colonial nature of many of the houses in the area, where we've done a very simple, this is the front of the building as it faces Route 108. What we have is a sort of a colonial feature where it's a very simple roof line, punched openings within the walls here, in following sort of the scale and proportion of what you see in a colonial building. And we sort of blended that with a little bit of the tower effect that you see in both the mill building, sometimes in terms of civic buildings, that says this is the entrance. So we've combined those two elements. This tower here, made out of brick, would be, and this is around the corner. As you go around the corner, this would be the other side of it. And then the building continues. And you can see how it steps down as you go back on the site from the two-story portion down to the one-story portion. So much of the building is actually one story on that lower, on the main floor. The issue with being a little bit larger than originally planned for the original pad, we're at 10,500 square feet. We wanted to make sure we provided enough parking for the facility and what would be happening in there. And I'll turn it over to Nate to talk about some of the site issues in terms of how we fit the parking in, what we're doing with grading, and what we're doing with the overall character of the building.
Hello, I'm Nathan Allison. I'm an engineer that works at TF Moran, and we prepared this particular site plan, which again is associated with the first building in the overall project. Now, I will say that at the time that I brought the plans into the municipality, I also brought in some 11 by 17 plans with the originally approved project. And the cover sheet for this project is sheet number 1, shows the overall layout as it will exist when this building is put in. So everything that I'm going to represent to you here, I've also shown on the cover sheet so that you can see how this building meshes with the overall layout for the site. The sheet that I'm going to be describing is actually sheet number 2. It contains a landscape plan that contains the overall layout of this particular part of the site. This particular plan has been rendered so that you can get an idea of the various elements that will be constructed in this part of the site. I'll describe, first of all, how this site appears when compared to the original site. At the present time, if you drive by the property, you can see that the site has been cleared and obviously the preparation for the parking areas and the building pad sites is underway. Actually, having some of the major improvements, the utilities for the most part have been put in, and it's just a matter of time before you're going to have those parking sanitary all in place. So that's in preparation, obviously, for the individual building sites. This particular site is at the top of the hill on the right-hand side as you come in. It borders along Moonlight Drive, and there was a fence put in the rear of this property as part of the original approval process for the site. The major change, aside from the obvious architectural difference in the building itself, has been the addition of a number of parking spaces, primarily on the western side of the building. Parking spaces, if you will notice on this particular plan, have been constructed in such a manner that they are shielded from the Moonlight Drive homes, both by the building and by the fence line. And that's not an accident. This was part of the overall strategy of being able to provide the additional parking that would support this particular building. In terms of how the overall drainage and grading works, it follows very closely the grading and drainage that was part of the original approval for the overall site. All of the parking areas and the building, in fact, will drain either to the parking areas and then into the detention basin just by the positive slope there, or else would be collected through the stormwater drainage system. In fact, if you take a look at the plan on the, and I'm going to describe the top of the board in this particular case as the western side. If you take a look at the western side of the site plan, you can even see that a storm drainage line has been placed to collect the water that will come into the swale in the rear of the building. So we have, again, made provision to collect not only the water from the parking areas, but also the building itself. At the time that this building pad will be constructed, all of the services will have been brought into the building and will supply the building with electric cable, water, and sanitary sewer. We've shown these connections, and in fact, the utility lines that are going to tie into the services from the building are already in place. There was a comment made, and I'm now going to return to the landscape plan, which is the rendering on the left here, that the grading, in fact, is going to go up to the fence line. Therefore, what we had identified as a clearing limit line behind the building is inaccurate on our plan. And I'll represent to you that that is true. It certainly was not intentional. The overall shape of the site plan as it originally existed, and some of the features of that were brought over by the time that this was drafted, and it was very simply an oversight. I will say that the way that this plan has been rendered is very, very accurate. You can see by the heavily greened-in area, the edge of the tree line, and it more or less coincides with the fence line. That fence line varies from 10 to perhaps 15 feet. When it was placed, it protected virtually all of the trees that lay along the border of that site. And I had represented at the public meeting at that first time, and now it's very visible that that's the case. That at one time this site apparently was an open site, and that the major trees were around the perimeter. And I think you can see that this site was very carefully cleared, and that in fact right now it's very heavily vegetated along that border. We are adding, in addition to the trees and the shrubbery that was shown on the original approved site plan, a number of trees around the building in those areas where they can be provided. The trees we're showing are in fact Bradford pear. They're very, very showy. We're also adding junipers along the western side of the building. There is a strip behind the sidewalk along the edge of the building that is available to plant low material. We also intend, but we did not show, to plant some trees along what would be identified, I believe, as the southern side of the building and the building elevations. We would intend to be planting a small tree there, probably something like a sourwood. We can't plant a lot simply because we have a swale extending around the building from the south and then up along the northerly line or easterly line where it is collected by the stormwater drainage system. That's pretty much it.
Just to highlight a few additional elements, these are some photos that were taken earlier this year. You can probably see some snow still on here, that show the fence here. You can see the fence. This is from the, say, from the front entrance of the building, looking towards the fence line. And you can see how the majority of these all these large trees are behind the fence line in that buffer zone, and that in front of the fence, and this shows it very well, it's a lot of small saplings. So in terms of creating a swale through there, it's not like we're taking out a lot of trees that are doing, that are providing that screen and that buffer to the adjacent property. The other element that I wanted to point out, in seeking your approval, there is a step that, just because of timing, we are going to the zoning board for a special exception related to the height of the building. So in seeking your approval, we're hoping for a conditional approval subject to theirs. In creating a little bit of the tower effect here, and also in terms of the width of the building, we're seeking a special exception, which the code allows for, relative to the height of the roof here, where we're creating the tower effect, and we're trying to duplicate a steep roof pitch here. We're probably, I'm trying to remember the exact height, 2 feet or so above the 35-foot height limit on this roof line here, and probably another 1.5 feet to this roof line here. So we are seeking a special exception from the zoning board in order to create that character. It's certainly possible, if it's denied, we can lower the roof, but we feel that's going to compromise some of the aesthetics, and the zoning special exception does allow for that type of application. So we will be seeking that approval separately. I think that's pretty much what we wanted to present tonight. Dan, I didn't know if you had anything that you wanted to add?
The project that we're proposing here in the area gives us the flexibility to create a family practice site with internal medicine, primary care, pediatrics as well. And then the upstairs addition, as we expand, to have that flexibility to bring in, looking at OB services, cardiology services, subspecialty services will come in to the site. And because of the capacity in the basement to have x-ray units, ultrasound, things that would work for the physicians and the community members who need tests here for a more controlled and broader base of services. The long-term picture works for us, and some of those things may come to pass in a year and a half, 2 years, or perhaps a little bit longer. We're staking that the size of the building, the size of the program, and the building is going to work with this community.
And we.
One other comment to make that Art didn't make, but I, along with our own staff and honest people who are intimate and involved in, is that the way we try to lay out our buildings, if we've been to the hospital recently, we look at spaces in the building. There's children's play areas, there's open spaces for checkout and privacy areas. There's not one space, there's 2 spaces for people to check out. There's a public conference room where we can bring patients and families in to talk about their disease states. Those are different ways of treating patients than just bringing them in and putting them in a small exam room and moving them out. We have a very aggressive and positive philosophy about family-centered care, and there's spaces in here that allow us to ensure that mothers can bring their children in stretchers and carriages rather, or in carts, family areas, family counseling areas, and spaces to do private counseling for physical service needs as well. So those are all different spaces that are in here that allow us to do what we do with our patients.
I think just to emphasize, the development of this first floor plan reflects all those types of things that you need in a family practice in today's market, and that's why the first floor grew as it did, but we feel we've accommodated it with the intent of the original proposal, and tried to be creative in how we did that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I like the question. Clay, is it in your opinion this application is complete?
Yes.
I didn't hear the question, Bill. I didn't hear the question.
Question from Clay is whether his consideration was this application is complete for our jurisdiction. He said yes.
Thank you. So do I have a motion to accept?
I would like to make the motion to accept the application as complete.
And I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Done. Okay, now we can open up to questions from the board to the applicant. On the architectural that you had there, the first floor going back out, that's going to the Moonlight Drive side?
This would be the Moonlight Drive side on the back. This is the view that you're seeing
Okay.
right here. So this is the fence line. This is the fence line back on Moonlight Drive.
Okay, so that's the view I'm seeing. How does it wrap around? I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
On the back side?
Yeah.
I do have, it's not rendered, but I do have a black and white version. That's in your package as well. On the back side, it's all one story as well. And we've kept it's actually a little bit of a false roof. It gables up and then it steps back down to the flat roof behind it. So we've carried that same one-story effect wrapping around here until you get back to the two-story portion.
Can you make the roof flat and put a red LED light around it?
Only if we use a 3-foot canopy.
What is the material for the main part of the building?
The main part of the building would be a clapboard, basically a vinyl siding to replicate clapboard.
Clapboard.
That's a brick facade on the tower?
Yes,
Shingled roof?
yes.
Is that tower shingles too?
I'm sorry, the tower would be a metal roof. That's correct. Yep. We did that on both the brick tower to highlight that, as well as this projects out, and I'll show you in plan, just for a little bit of additional space and a little bit of expression at the waiting room right here. That little bit of a bump out right there is brick, which you're seeing in the one story here. And that we did that for two reasons. One, a little bit of the space needs downstairs, but also a little bit to break up this long facade, so it wasn't one big, massive facade. And so we have a small section metal roof over that as well.
In regards to setbacks with Moonlight Drive, in that picture right there, okay, the setback that, I remember going through the subdivision of this thing here, the people wanted this 25-foot setback. That's going to be held?
We've maintained that 25-foot setback. That's this line right here, and you can see how the building, we worked very hard to maintain that 25 feet or more. At the same time, we tried to hold the building as far back from Route 108 so we could get some trees across the front of that facade also. But yes, we've maintained that 25 feet. That is why we're getting kind of the jagged effect on the back of the building there.
Continue it.
I don't know what that. Should have a public hearing. The public-
Did you review the parking calculations that you had here? If you have 10,000, how many parking spaces do you have for this building?
4 spaces per 1,000, which matches the original. There's an interesting, in the plan here, we do show, for this building here, we've added these spaces here, and we actually reconfigured this to get 2 more spaces here. We did have to, because it's a medical office, we've upped the handicap parking to 4 spaces, which is basically 5%, which is more, which is necessary as well. So we added spaces along this side of the building, and we reconfigured this a little bit to accommodate 2 additional spaces here. We did not change any of the parking for these two pads right here. The parking counts did not change at all for those buildings, and we just added those additional 16 spaces that we needed to accommodate the 10,500 square feet here.
So that gives you 40 parking spaces totally?
42.
42.
I'm sorry, 42 for this building.
Right.
Plus then the remainder of the parking for the other buildings.
Clay had a comment of the, in his notes, I believe he passed on to you about the swale and the vegetation contradicting. Could you explain that?
Yes, and that's, I alluded to this before.
Okay, could you redo it again, please?
Yes. What he was referring to is the fact that on our landscaping plan, we identify something that says existing vegetation to remain. And again, that was certainly not intentional. And you can see if you look at the layout plan, which is the plan on the right on that second sheet, that the grading extends all the way over to the fence. So the conflict is that we can't show obviously woods remaining right up to the edge of the building if we're putting a swale in the back of the building. It was not intentional. It was very simply a drafting error. We pulled over, if you look at the 11 by 17s, you can see that the woods line got pulled over with that. It just was, no one noticed it, that's all.
So you will be clearing that area?
Absolutely.
What do you,
That's why we showed, that's why I presented these photos here to show, and matter of fact, it might be good to bring them up close.
Yeah.
So you can see what the trees are between the building and the fence.
All of the large trees on this site, by the way, the fence was located in at least 10 feet in all locations from that stone wall. This is where all the large trees, substantially all the large trees on the site were located. As you can see from this picture, these in front of the fence or on this side are all saplings. They're all small trees, and it's even more pronounced at this time if you go out and look at it. It just looks like there's really nothing there. So we're proposing to be grading down, and when we grade down, we're going to have, for the most part, a 103 slope, which is easily maintained. It's a safe slope. To a point where we gather swale behind that building, so that whole entire area will be graded. That was what you were referring to, wasn't it? Yes.
so this will be grass then in front of the,
That's correct.
in front of the fence down to the swale?
That's correct. I think it's a good idea anyways, simply because if you want it regularly maintained, getting the lawnmower back there, you don't want to have to deal with any other vegetation.
Can anybody else on the board who was there at the time, which most of us, I believe, I recollect asking at the time to put arbor white pines in along the perimeter? I don't have that up. Do you
I can tell you what that would refer to.
Okay.
I remember the discussion very well.
I remember it, I just can't remember the details.
The details were that we had proposed white pines, well, it wasn't just white pines. In fact, I think it was
A mixture.
Doug fir and Norway spruce were ultimately decided upon. There was a member who was an expert who felt that they were the ones to use. But we originally proposed a double line of them all around the site. When the neighbors on Candlelight Drive came in, there was a discussion about putting a fence there, and the developer agreed to either put in the trees or to put in the fence. There's a requirement to maintain a 10-foot space, and the convenience of putting the fence from 10 to, as much as maybe 15 feet to avoid the trees actually preserved that buffer forever, is what it did. But that was it. It was an either or. The rest of the site, outside of this area, in fact, does have the double line of trees. They're all going to be planted.
Okay. And the reason it can't be done here is because this building's bigger?
I remember that. That was, they didn't want to plant things on the other side of the fence and not have access to it for maintenance purposes. See, when they put up the stockade fence, they're essentially cutting themselves off from access to that property. So that it was a trade-off, and they accepted the fence in lieu of trees. And they essentially got 10 feet extra on the backyards of there.
Any other locations, there's no fence, it's just the trees?
It's the other way around. In the other locations, it's all going to be trees.
That's my point. No fence.
Right, no fence.
That's what, I wasn't clear, thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Any other questions? Chet, did you have your hand up? Okay.
Question, how many manholes are you gonna have on this site? On the entire site, how many manholes? Storm manholes?
Storm manholes?
Yes.
Storm structures. There are, let's see, maybe I can go to the cover sheet. Of course, they're not outlined on the cover
Right.
sheet. But the entire site from essentially this crosswalk all the way back, and including these parking areas and the buildings, there are notes that say the buildings have to drain, are all collected and go into the detention basin on the property. So I don't know exactly how many it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's probably 5 or 6 inlets on that. You know, at the top of the entrance drive and on back. There are a number of inlets and structures.
And there's only one detention basin?
That's correct.
You set, Chet?
Yeah.
It's drained, oh, okay.
Good, Bob.
Well, from the detention basin, it's drained down to the Exeter Street. So, I mean, it's not just a detention basin.
It's swaled, in other words.
No.
No, it's a basin, but the basin has got a pipe that runs down to 108,
Yes, okay.
okay?
Yes.
Overflow.
Yes,
And it goes into the storm drainage system.
Right.
yes.
That's how we approved it on the plan we approved
Yes.
back in whenever it was. Okay. Any other questions from the board? I'll open it up to public comments. Yes, sir? Should you come up and say your name and address for the record, please?
Jim Lancaster, 21 Maple Street. I haven't been able to see any of this because it's been twisted towards you. I'm trying to figure out where my house is in proximity to where the structure is going to be.
Okay. You're on Maple Street?
I believe here. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, you're here, there. It's way in the front of the property.
So it's going to be down in this section here.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, if you're driving up 108 and you're looking up the hill,
Mhm.
it's on the right, top of the hill. On the
Right
hand
top
side.
of the hill, okay.
Okay.
Let's see, another question was, this was supposed to be 3 smaller buildings. Now, does this mean there's still going to be additional buildings put in the future? Let's see. And how far up does the parking go on that?
Goes up to the northwest corner of the building.
So it would end here?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that's all.
And pretty much, if Clay, correct me if I'm wrong, but on the last plan, on the plan that we approved, that parking, the only addition they put is in front of the building. So
Okay.
I don't think they expanded it further west from the building.
Closer to the other 2 buildings? No, we didn't.
Okay. All right.
As a matter of fact, I'm not sure this room's due any more expansion.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Yes, ma'am. Your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Marie Hall, and I'm 26 Moonlight Drive. I would be the closest townhouse apartment to this building that's going in. So would you mind also, I couldn't see what it would look like from my section.
Do you know which, I'm going to use the cover sheet here. Do you know,
This is me,
okay,
so
okay.
there's the fence.
Well, here's the wall.
Yeah.
And here's the fence.
Uh-huh.
And then, for the most part, you're 15 feet in beyond that fence.
Okay. So
And that,
the back of the building will be abutting it, and the parking will all be
no,
on the other sides of it?
that is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's done deliberately.
Actually, the height of the building back there where it's one story will probably, the bulk of the building will be below the fence, a little bit will be above the fence.
Well, I did have to say that I think this group did a good job in listening to the concerns that we brought at the last public forum. Aesthetically, the design of the building looks good to me. I like that it is at a low level and is a little less unobtrusive to the view than I suspected that it would be. It was a big shock the day I came home and the trees were gone. I did go to work and put my head down and sob like a baby, but I've gotten over it. It's summer now. There is a border of evergreens on our side that has filled in nicely. I didn't remember that it was going to be an either-or thing as far as the fence and the trees goes, but I see from this design that you're really limited, and my only concern about the fence would be is that there is a gate in the fence where there's a break in the stone wall, and I would hope that gate would only be used for emergency purposes. I'm a little concerned about the parking, the amount of parking that is planned. I think when we discussed about the possible uses for the buildings that were going to be going in there, that we were concerned about the amount of parking that was required for a doctor's office. What will the hours, the days and hours for the practice, what a proposal do you have for that?
Generally, I'd say 8:30 till 5-ish, 6-ish in the evening. We would certainly think of Saturday hours for ease of access.
Okay.
Saturday, Saturday.
And is there any lighting on the back side of the building? It can be the LED if it's on the three sides, not facing the residential area. I'd be okay with that. You know, I'm concerned about a spotlight for security purposes sort of things, because the bedroom is very close there. So if you have, it's like the tower and the spotlight.
I discussed this with the hospital. The only lighting we've considered is there's a back door, and I'll show you where that is on the plan.
Okay.
There's a back door right here on the back side of the building.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a door over here, an exit door here. I would envision that we'd have a downlight here and a downlight here just for security reasons, but we had not planned any wall lighting that
Okay,
shines
no
out.
motion lights and stuff like that and everything, okay. So again, I am concerned about the amount of parking, and also the purpose for the use of the building. I guess I should be honest and say that I am a nurse at Lamprey Healthcare. I'm not here tonight to represent Lamprey Healthcare. I'm here on my own behalf. And I just know, I only work in the Newmarket office one day a week, and I know that parking has continued to be an issue. You'll always end up needing about 3 more times parking than you think you do. Out of the 45 parking spaces that they have planned, probably a third of that will be used for staff, and that's before they add specialists into the upstairs area as well. I'm also concerned about the strain on our community about bringing a second family practice into Newmarket. Lamprey Healthcare, as you may know, has been a good neighbor for many years. That probably, we rely on 50% of our patients to be insured so that we can continue to provide services for the 50% of our patients who are uninsured. We currently offer many ancillary services. We do offer lab in our current Newmarket office, and as you're aware, there's a large expansion going on in that office, and there will be additional ancillary services as well, and I'm a little concerned about the duplication of services, but I understand that progress happens, and I just needed to give my opinions. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask you one question, please, Marie? Certainly. Is your concern on the parking is that there's not enough or too much?
There's not enough.
Any other questions from the public? Seeing none, I'll close the public session. Does the board have any comments, questions, concern on parking? Clay, they're providing enough parking per the regulations?
Yes.
Let me ask the applicant, what's your experience in this in terms of your staffing and patients and further adding additional practices?
I think there are two issues. Many times, in terms of the a medical practice, you do want some additional spaces beyond the zoning. The fact that we have the first floor of about 4,800 square feet, which is the family practice, we have the upstairs. We don't know yet which specialist might go in there, and that'll be determined over time. But then we have the diagnostics plus additional space on the ground floor. So we're not utilizing the full 10,500 square feet as a full as the full family practice. So in that sense, that's where we feel the 4 spaces per 1,000 begins to work. The other side of your question too is a number of staff members. As I mentioned early on, the family practice, we're looking at basically 2.5 providers, and we figure 7 to 8 staff, plus maybe 2 staff in the diagnostic area downstairs. So that adds up to 12 people in terms of staff, and that leaves a balance of 30 spaces for patients.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, discussions from the board? Do I have a motion?
No request for waivers or anything?
Not that I'm aware of.
No request for any waivers or anything?
The only thing that we request, we're seeking your approval, but we do require the height special exception from the zoning board still.
Zoning, so we'll need the conditions based
So
on.
I guess I'd like to make a motion to accept the minor site, the site plan for 60 Exeter Street on the condition of receiving zoning board of adjustment approval for the height variance. Or special exception, you said?
Special exception.
What conditions they have?
That there's no occupied space and that it's intimately related to the need for the construction.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Chad, second it. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? None. Good luck.
Now we need to do the...
In paraphrase, sorry. Not so quick.
We had our brief conversation.
I received your comments yesterday.
Yeah.
We did a calculation and
Bring it, let me see.
What we did is where we know the family practice has the 2.5 providers, we suggested that based on the 250 gallons per day per provider. Second floor, we don't know who's up there yet, so we propose that those impact fees be decided once we know who's going in there and what the use is. The lower level diagnostics, because it's not really a provider down there as much as staff, we suggest basing that on the square footage, and down there we have 1,820 square feet of usable space. The balance is the utility space, And so we suggested that on 15 gallons per day per 100 square feet, which would equal 270 gallons per day. Total suggested would be 895 gallons per day for the lower level and the first floor. Second floor to be determined still.
You want to take a look at that?
Now, this impact fee is that in addition to the tie-in fees?
Yep.
In addition to the what fee?
Tie-in fees.
Seems reasonable to me. I mean, it's as you know, once again, in June, the law changed that required the planning board now to assess the impact fees. And we do have impact fees on non-residential development for water and sewer only. And it's calculated on a per gallon day. And, you know, struggling to adjust to this law as well, I provided the applicants with a couple of options on how they could calculate their fees. It's either going to be us or Dan, and now it's us. And so, you know, I gave them some of the DES requirements for designs and said that they should present something that they feel is reasonable, and seems reasonable to me.
Okay. Just to move this along, I'll make a motion to assess impact fees for wastewater for $5,996.50 and water for $3,606.85 for a total of $9,603.35, with the condition that once the additional practice on the upper floor is determined, that impact fees be reassessed for that portion. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Do I have a discussion? Being no discussion, I will put it to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No opposed. Clay, could you just take this for the record?
Yeah, will you please?
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks.
Next item on the,
Take that down.
next item on the agenda is a public hearing for an application for a lot line revision and subdivision requested by the town of Newmarket / Stanley Sajic at Packers Falls Road, tax map U1, lots 20 and 21, R1 zone. The proposals for a lot line revision and the creation of an open space subdivision. Two lots will be divided out of lot 21, with the remaining land, lot 20, becoming open space. Sashik, I'm sorry.
Can we make a motion to extend that meeting?
And we have two more items, Chad. Unless, I'll put it to the board. No, I'm gonna see if we can keep it going.
All right.
This is a new plan. It's slightly different than that one. Show a lot line right here.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's scratch that.
I like the colors. People with GIS, huh? Tell you what, the two of them down that way, and I'll share with Bob.
Good evening, my name is Steve Michaud from Doucette Survey, here this evening representing the town of Newmarket and Stanley Sajic in this application. The new plans that you're receiving tie into the first comment from Mr. Mitchell's review. The fine details of the application were being fine-tuned up until yesterday, and the plan that you see before you has an additional lot line that was not shown on the original submittal. The property is located on Packers Falls Road. There are 2 parcels involved in this application. Tax map U1, lots 20 and 21. Lot 20 is owned by the town, and it comprises the lower portion of the area shown on this map. And lot 21 is owned by Mr. Sajic, and that is the northerly portion of this area. Currently, the Sajic parcel has 2 existing homes on the site, and the town parcel has 1 home. The proposal before you is to use the existing 2 lots in order to create a 4-lot subdivision using your open space ordinance. And under this design, each of the existing homes would be located on its own parcel of land. Those are shown in these green areas, totaling 3 parcels. The 4th lot I mentioned would be the open space component, which is shown in maroon, and for your information, the gray areas are wetland areas. The open space component, as I mentioned, shown in red here, comprises approximately 9 acres when all is said and done. The proposed house lots, rather, vary in size. The smallest is about 1/2 acre, and the 2 larger ones are between 1.5 acres and 2 acres. The open space ordinance that you have is a little bit different than the conventional subdivision regulations, as you know. I don't know how many or if any applications have gone through the process with your board. I know it's a relatively new ordinance, and this makes use of that regulation, and it's, as you can see, sort of an innovative design to be able to utilize the remaining portion as open space that would be owned by the town. At this point, if you have any questions, I'd certainly be happy to try to answer those for you.
First, I have a motion to accept. Hang on for a minute, Steve.
So what basically we're doing here is making 3 non-conforming lots more non-conforming?
There are currently 2 parcels comprising 6.5 acres each. They're long and rectangular in nature. One of those parcels has 2 buildings on it.
Yeah.
The other parcel, which the town owns, has 1 building.
None of them meet the 200-foot frontage, 2-acre
That's
requirement. So basically, by doing this, you are making them more non-conforming.
They do not meet the frontage requirements. They currently meet the area density requirements. However, using the open space ordinance, a lot of the dimensional requirements that would be required to be adhered to as part of a conventional design are sort of shaken up a little bit, if you would, in order to be able to subdivide this using that open space ordinance.
This requires zoning board approval?
Not
No?
under the open space ordinance.
I have a motion to accept the plan as complete. I presume the plan is complete?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to accept the plan as complete.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Any more questions for Steve? One I have is the 40-foot wide access easement
Yes.
is for,
That is being provided to allow for access to the open space area.
Are there any restrictions on that easement use?
The use of the easement itself, at this time, we don't have language drafted for that easement. It's being proposed as an access easement for vehicular traffic, potentially.
Whether if the town did a recreation field or something else in here that,
That option, that right-of-way is being provided for that option.
So the easement would be held by the town.
The easement would be in favor of the town, correct? Yep.
Yes.
What this gives the town the ability to do is have a marketable parcel of land with a house on it that does not affect the remaining portion, the maroon portion, which they're currently reviewing for potential recreation facilities.
What's the width of this driveway going into Lot 2 on Lot 21?
25 feet.
Okay, don't seem to see it on there.
Lots are served by water and sewer too, correct?
Correct.
So lot size
Municipal
issues or
services.
well radiuses or anything like that.
This will not require New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services subdivision approval.
Are these lots, either these, oh my God, who got that spelling? Are either lots, prop said lot 21-1 and proposed lot 21-2, are they, is lot 21-1 an existing lot?
Lot 21-1, as shown,
Yes.
it is not in its existing configuration. The green, the light green shown here is the proposed lot. The existing lot extends back in this fashion.
Oh, okay, so there's two houses on one lot.
Correct.
Currently.
Currently.
On
After
the-
subdivision, there'll be two houses on separate lots.
Correct. The existing condition is that there are two houses on the Sajic property.
So, and I don't know if you can answer this, Steve, or explain these two. If the town does go through with fields back in the open space, their intent would be to, potential selling the home, they'd still hold an easement even if they sold it to get access to the
Correct.
back.
And as I said, this just gives them a little bit of flexibility, not knowing exactly what the future holds for that remaining land. It gives them the ability to market that lot if they decide to do that.
Any other questions from the board? I can't see you behind you, Steve. I think Jim's only here. Jim, I'll open up the public comment. No public comment. I'll close the public comment. If there are no other further discussion with the board, I've accepted the plan. Do I have a motion to approve the lot line? Lee, you have more questions?
Well, are we talking about both a subdivision and lot line adjustments?
I think it's technically a subdivision. Yeah, I mean, you could call it anything. Could be a merger, then a lot line, then a subdivision.
A lot of things have to happen simultaneously, but I think ultimately,
I guess the application calls for both a lot line revision and a subdivision, so I guess it covers both issues, because there are both subdivisions and lot line adjustments.
there is certainly a consolidation and then a subdivision of parcels, so that's why we noticed it as we did.
So the access easement is going to be, it's going to be just an easement, it's not going to become part of the this lot?
The access easement, the 40-foot access easement shown is strictly an easement. It will be owned in fee by the owner of Lot 20-1.
So this lot, back lot, he will have no frontage on.
Correct.
on-
And there is a provision in the open space regulation to allow for that under this open space design.
Lot without having frontage on a class 5 or better road.
Correct. Because it's being designated as open space.
Go ahead. Any further discussion? Leo, you have any? Leo?
I'm somewhat confused, but I guess I'll find out later.
Well, if you're confused, let's get over the confusion. What is it?
I guess I didn't, this lot U-117, is that part of the Leary property?
Yes.
Oh.
That was the Leary, the portion of the Leary parcel that had the house on it.
Okay. Okay, all right, so I guess the stone wall is, all right.
Let me make one thing very clear in the record, that this land that is designated as open space can be used as active or passive recreational purposes and nothing else. Not for water tanks, not for cell towers, not for anything that the town does, because even though the town owns a portion of the land, that this approval flows to the creation of the 3 lots, which are held by private people. So there was some confusion in the last time we approved a similar application on behalf, working with the town, and a different area of the town seemed to interpret our ruling in a different way. It's my opinion that even though that this open space parcel will be opened by the town, the privilege to create the other 3 lots extend from the treatment of that parcel. So if the town chooses to treat that parcel as anything other than active or passive open space or recreational use, it would be in essence jeopardizing the approval of the other 3 lots.
Other 3 lots meaning?
The 3 lots with the houses on it.
Oh.
Because the privilege that the town and Mr. Zajac are exercising to create these substandard, what are, we would commonly assume to be substandard lots, is the fact that they have over 8 acres of open space. If the town, at some reason, wants to put a water treatment plant out there, they've therefore eliminated the open space, which has eroded the foundation for creating the lots, which presents a problem for the 3 people who have these lots. So that's just what I want to make clear.
But that doesn't
affect the Leary property at all.
Property
No, the Leary property is a different issue, different piece of land.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions? Do I have a motion?
I make the motion that we grant the application for a lot line revision and subdivision for tax map U1, lots 20, 20, 20, and 21 in the R1 zone.
Have a second?
I'll second it.
Good, second it. Discussion? Vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None?
Thank you.
One more item. Next item on the agenda, there will be a public hearing for an application for revision to a previous approval for William and Eleanor Connor at 295 Wadley Falls, tax map R5, lots 5-12 and 5-13, all one district. The purpose of the revision is to modify the existing approval to change the condition regarding deed restrictions and notation on the Mylar regarding subdivision limitation, use restrictions, and density limitations to reflect that any further subdivision, density increase, or use shall be in accordance with the regulations and ordinance in place at the time of the application. Full copy is on file at the Town Hall of normal business hours. Yes, sir. Name and record for the,
Pardon me?
state your name and address for the record, and
William Connor, 295 Wadley Falls Road.
good evening.
We're simply asking to have those deed and Mylar restrictions removed from our properties. They were placed on the deeds and Mylar in 1997, and at the time, there was 2-acre zoning, and there's still 2-acre zoning.
How did they get, for what reason were they put on the deed and the Mylars? Do you know, can you fill us in as to any sort of history here, or?
I don't know how much detail you want. I can tell you what I know. 1996, in September of 1996, my wife and I saw this land with a for sale sign on it. We looked at it, we talked to the realtor, we marked up a tax map, said we'll buy this portion. Turns out the land had not been subdivided at that point. It went to the planning board in December of 96. And the plan that was presented then had a bunch of condos and house lots and whatever, which is not what we had signed up to buy. So the realtor gave us our deposit back, she quit, and that was that until about March or April of 97. Another realtor called me up and said the owner of Crow Eagle Falls Realty Trust, Karen Thomas, she had gone bankrupt, and that land was up for sale again. Would you be interested? At that point, I offered, I said, okay, it was 77 acres of the parcel of land. I made an offer. That offer was accepted. A week or so later, it turns out that there was more mortgage and liens on the property than what I offered. So I wasn't going to buy it that way. So the lady that was involved, I mean, how much detail do you want? You want to?
I just want clarification. I don't know enough about the history, or others on the board may not either. Is usually a plan's approved with notes and how they got on there, and if there's confusion,
Well,
I think it's
at any rate, I offered to buy half the property, and Bill Doucette was representing the Crow Eagle Falls Realty Trust, and the bank who held the mortgage, which was Old Port Bank. Commercial lending officer was Bill Young. As it turned out, they wouldn't let the property go for the price I was willing to pay in its entirety, but they said, we'll sell you half. I said, okay, I'd like to have this 30-acre lot and this 5-acre lot, which left another 35 or 40-acre lot left over. So Doucette took that to the planning board in probably June or July of 97, and they said, the planning board said, as long as there's no further subdivision allowed, we'll approve it. My attorney said, they can't do that, that's not correct, it's illegal. And I said, well, what choices do I have? He said, well, you can take it to Superior Court, or you can walk away. So he was doing the deeds, so I had him do the deeds up without those restrictions. I presented those deeds. Doucette came back to me with a letter, which I gave to Clay Mitchell, which said, your deeds don't have these restrictions in them, and they're not going to be accepted unless you put them in. So I went back to the attorney, and I said, you know, we'll take it like it is. The planning board approved that subdivision under those restrictions. It was probably June or July. My wife and I purchased those 2 lots in August, and I think the other lot went to auction in September, and a fellow by the name of Bernie Jones bought it. And it's essentially stayed that way since then.
And you're asking us to...
Pardon me?
You're asking us to...
I'm asking you to correct the errors that were made then.
Wasn't this lot part of that subdivision that was approved on Lang's Lane?
I'm sorry, Lou, I'm hard of hearing.
So much. Weren't these lots part of the large parcel that went down all the way to Lang's Lane that was approved as part of one big subdivision by the Thompsons back there?
You're probably right. That was before my time.
Yeah. I was on a planning board at that time, and this was part of a subdivision that carried several lots on Lang's Lane and went through, and there's a whole mess of wetlands in between the two, and they sort of...
This was the Bennett property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my recollection is, no, they did grant smaller lots and not sort of like an open space subdivision, more cluster we called it at that time, I guess, and it was part of allowing smaller lots and taking bigger lots out of it. And I thought that's the recollection that I had of it. It was one big subdivision that Thomas's did at that time.
Well, you know, my understanding was there was a lot of problems with Karen Thomas, the president of Croigle Realty Trust, and the planning board. And I was, you know, I can't speak to that firsthand, but I was told that by her banker, her real estate agent, Doucette, and a couple other people who'd rather remain anonymous, that apparently she did things to try to screw the town and so forth. And I can attest to the fact that she wasn't necessarily the most honest person. I mean, when I purchased the property, when I made the offer on the property, she called me up and said, "Oh, great offer, we'll accept it, but I want to lower the price." I said, "How's that?" She said, "Well, I'll lower the price by 25 grand and you pay me after the closing in cash." So I said, "Pardon me, could you explain that again?" And I put the record button on my phone, let her repeat it, and then I played it for the real estate agent and her banker. And at that point, she was effectively out of it. My wife and I are the ones who decided on make that a 30-acre and a 5-acre lot. What we didn't want was to have no further subdivision. At the time, we were willing to accept it. In the ensuing 7 or 8 years, things have changed dramatically. And we're not happy with that. We would like to have simply the same rights as every other landowner in town, to be allowed to conform to whatever the existing zoning laws are at the time. You know.
Well, I see no reason why we shouldn't, but, I mean, we've all seen Clay's notes and opinions. This is similar to something we've done with Nostrum.
I guess I'm looking at these old notes there, and I guess no access from lot 5-1 would be allowed from Route 152. Is this which, is this lot 5-1, either one of these two lots that?
Pardon me?
you're referring to? Lot 5-1 on the previous subdivision, you don't?
The subdivision that was approved in, I think it was July of '97, there was 77 acres there, something like 77 acres. They approved a 30-lot house lot, a 5-acre house lot, which my wife and I subsequently bought, and then there was another 35-acre lot that we didn't purchase, that went to auction that September, the following September, and it was purchased by a fellow by the name of Bernie Jones, and he still owns it.
That was on Lang's Lane.
Well, it actually has 200 feet on Wadley Falls Road.
Who has?
That lot, that third lot,
Oh.
has 200 feet frontage on Wadley Falls Road to make it a legal lot. It does have I think it's a 20-foot right-of-way for a driveway off of Lang's Lane to access it. And the planning board, when they approved that subdivision, said there would be no access off of Wadley Falls Road. But in order to make that a legal lot, it had to have 200-foot frontage.
On Wadley's Falls Road.
Yeah, because there was no place to put it on Lang's Lane. They only had a 20-foot wide right-of-way on Lang's Lane.
The issue is not that 35 acres, is your 30 plus 5.
That's nothing that, I don't own that.
Right, the issue here tonight is.
Just mine.
30, you have 2, which are 30 and
Right.
5.
That's correct.
Separate lots, okay.
And they all access on Wadley's Falls Road.
Pardon me?
And they all access on Wadley's Falls Road.
My 2 lots are accessed on Wadley Falls Road. And I live on one of the lots.
Right, okay.
Do you have any idea, can anybody shed any light why the planning board at that time would have put that restriction on you?
Pardon me?
Do you have any idea, do you or anybody else, Leo being on the board at the time, any idea why the planning board would have put that restriction on?
Yeah, basically, we did that a lot in that period of time in order to do cluster type subdivisions, that we allowed smaller lots and to break up. Basically, if you had 30 lots and taking out the 15% for roads and whatever, it allowed you 14 lots. You didn't have to have them all 2-acre lots. You could make some 1 acre, some half acres, and you end up with some 10-acre lots. By going through that in a cluster, you then could not re-subdivide the 10-acre lots because you would use that to create your 1-acre or half-acre lots, basically. That's the...
Well, it was 2-acre zoning at the time.
Yeah, basically, so if you had 30 acres, say, forgetting the roads, that would allow you to have 15 lots in that 30-acre. But you didn't, on a cluster, you didn't have to have all 2-acre lots. You could have some half acres, depending on your wetlands, depending on the sizes. You could have some half acres, you could have some 1 acres. You may end up with a 10-acre lot to get your 15 lots in that 30 acres. And at the time, we put the note in, is that you couldn't re-subdivide the 10-acre lot that you made out of, to get your 15 lots.
Similar to what Shanda Drive is, basically.
Yeah, I think Sanderdye was a cluster type.
It is,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
So what
Yeah.
you're saying is that, yeah, it's 2-acre zoning, but you allowed them to put them on smaller lots, assuming the common land around it was part of.
Farmland or some larger
But you
lot, basically. And I guess, I don't recall, I guess I was chairman of the board at that time, but I don't recall exactly whether this was.
But you never applied for a cluster development. I mean, you just wanted the 5-acre and the 30-acre.
I'm not intending to do anything. I simply want to get those restrictions removed, so I'm just like everybody else in town. Right now, as far as I'm concerned, we're being discriminated against.
My question is, was this part of a cluster that was done that?
If we decided at some point in the future to subdivide, we would expect to come before the planning board with whatever kind of subdivision it was that conformed with all the existing laws and ask for approval. Right now, we can't do that.
All right, not to belabor this any longer, does anybody see any reason why we should not revise the condition on the drawings and the deed?
Well, my only thought is unless this was part of a cluster, and if this was one of the larger lots created out of that cluster to allow a bunch of smaller lots in, then I would be opposed to it, because it's just like, we have a cluster doing it at Hamel Farm.
You
but
mean if
can't-
if those 30 acres are really attached to another subdivision?
Yes, out of the Thompson subdivision was made of Lang's Lane.
How could, I wouldn't see why, I wouldn't see how that could be, but
The lots, not, I think it's not, because the condition didn't appear until 1997. And at 1997, it was one 70-acre parcel just being divided into 3.
right. That's
So,
why I'm.
Yeah, and I think that there were lots, the lots that were created on Lang's Lane are actually, I think, conforming. I think they're over 2 acres, so that wasn't a part of a cluster.
Can't tell.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of Leo's, I don't know, so I'm presuming that that's the case, that isn't the case, that isn't.
Unless the minutes are
part.
really anemic and there was a whole cluster approved and I missed
Yeah,
it in the
that's
record.
the-
I mean,
yeah,
the
I'm not
record,
reading-
the record from the 97 approval, which is when the condition, when this thing appeared, is a 70-acre parcel, right? Or is it the 35-acre being divided into 2 parcels? There's no other lots being created at that time.
The
So
way I-
it was not part of a cluster application. It was merely a 2-lot application at that time. And then-
Right, and the third lot being 35 for somebody else to take.
Right.
What about the 5-acre?
He lives,
What about it?
No, well, they said you had the 35-acre.
Well, there's a 30 and a 5 acre.
Yeah.
Because I offered to buy the whole 77 acres.
Yeah.
And even though they accepted that offer, it turns out there were more mortgages and liens on the 77 acres than I was willing to pay.
Yeah.
So I said, I'll buy half. Please divide it into a 30-acre lot where I'm going to build my house, which I did, and a 5-acre lot next door. And the other lot, I can't afford the price that you guys need, so you do what you want with it. And they did. They put it up for auction, and somebody else bought it. So, we had 77 acres that was broken into 3 lots in a minor subdivision, and that was that. I bought 2 of the lots, another guy bought another lot, and I built the house on one, and it's stayed the same since then. I mean, that's,
Does the other 35 plus or minus acres, that third lot, does that also contain the same restrictions as your?
I don't think so, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm also not aware.
It has a restriction that there's no access allowed off of Wadley Falls Road, which is kind of a moot point, because the 200-foot frontage that lot has on Wadley Falls Road would probably cost $5 million to access that land. I mean, it's a valley, it's a gulch. Goes through the bridges and the permitting and so forth would make it not very economical to get into that lot that way.
That isn't the 5-acre lot you own.
I own it.
Oh, you own that lot.
I own it, yeah.
no, you're
No,
talking about 2 different things. He was talking about the access to the other 35-acre lot.
The 35-acre lot, I don't know if you have a map, Clay.
I do. Unfortunately, it's only one.
There's a leg on the other 35 that goes out. See, it would not have been a legal lot without 200-foot frontage someplace. The only place they could get that frontage was on Wadley Falls Road. But the access is a 20-foot right-of-way off of Lang's Lane.
Yeah, all right.
Do you want me to go get the map?
It's the 30, that's the 35.
Yeah, right.
That's the 30 and that's the 35, and that's part of the 5.
See that leg coming out to Wadley Falls Road?
Right there. Yeah, that's what makes this a legal lot. They actually come off Lang's Lane on the other side.
Yeah.
Our regulations don't require you to access your property through your 200-foot frontage.
You're talking to Robert, right?
Well, basically, this lot they're talking about You aren't required to have access to your lot on the, beyond
Wait a
the
minute,
200
we're talking about a lot that's not even in question here, so why are we even talking about it? We're talking about,
exactly right.
we're wrapping ourselves around an axle.
I don't
a
care
piece of
about that
property that's
lot.
not on the table right now. Let's talk about this man's 30 acres and 5 acres. I don't care about that 35-acre lot.
Yeah,
I don't care if it's on Wildly Falls, I don't care if it's on Lang's Lane.
Go George.
Jeez. So,
I think if I can make a suggestion, that I think that we've established that, there's sufficient evidence that the planning board somehow is involved in getting this deed restriction and the note on the plan. To the extent that's true, I think that this planning board now has the jurisdiction and the authority to remove that and do what we did on the Nostrum and say any further subdivision, density, or use will be in compliance with the regulations at the time. The clarification that we got from town council was, the planning board is not making a ruling on private property rights, and so to the extent anybody else has any claim, they have to deal with that in court. We don't have the authority to adjudicate that matter, and it's not before us. Ours is the planning board's authority, and so that's how I would suggest you render your motion. Because as you know, I like to see open space. I don't like it being done in the way this appears to have been done. I prefer the legal method. I don't think that the record is sufficient in 1997 to support such a condition. That's my opinion.
I see it now.
If you'd like to talk about the other lot, we can hang out later.
I've gotten to my LED issue.
We didn't find out whether those lights chase each other.
I asked that at the previous one.
All right. So in your opinion, Clay, we can modify the language similar to what we did for Nostrum? That at the time, if Mr. Khan ever wanted to subdivide or do anything with his property, you have to conform to the zoning, the zoning laws at the time.
At the time of the application.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is really a non sequitur, but it shows anybody in the future that they realize we considered the matter and what our intent was in changing it.
Okay, did you get that, Erica, what I just said?
Is that a motion?
That's, I'm making that as a motion.
Can you
I
repeat
second
that
it.
one more time then?
That we modify the language on Mr. Connor's plans, and then you have to take it to the deed, plans to state that if later on the land is being subdivided, that it needs to come before the board and conform to the zoning ordinances in effect at the time of the application.
What I want to make sure happens is this no further subdivision allowed is taken off that Mylar. It's on the Mylar. There's a note that says no further subdivision allowed.
We can't, once it's recorded, it's recorded. What we will provide you with is a single-page document that you can record into your chain of title that says that the note is modified as as follows. And that will go into your chain of title. It'll be signed by the chairman of the planning board.
And so what do I do with that?
With the piece of paper, you take it to the registry of deeds and record it in the chain of title. And then if anybody comes up and says, well, what about this note on the plan? You say, well, you need to go to this book and page, and you can see that the planning board modified that to remove the note. But once something's recorded at a registry, it's there. There's nothing you can do about it. You've got to record something legally on top of it, which is what this decision would entitle you to do. To record that, and then if anybody has a question, you point to it, and then they say, okay, I see what's going on.
There's a motion on the table. I need a second.
I second it.
Discussion? I can't believe we will. Any discussion?
Did we need to open up a public hearing? As we do that?
Well, do you see anybody out there who's going to talk to us?
I realize that.
Unless we have someone like Deb who wants to rush on down right now. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. Any abstain? None. Any other business? Hearing none. Motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Somebody second?
Second.
Bob, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm not gonna even ask if anybody's opposed.
Wait, who send me this document?
I thought
Yes,
that we
I'll
just
send
had
it to
the
you
formal
or to your lawyer, however you want to do it. guys can record it.
Yeah, no, I